Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Minato and Kushina hid a scroll for Naruto with all their secrets part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Land of Fire. Konohagakure. Outside the village's walls. Minato Namikaze, the Yellow Flash, and the fourth Hokage of Konohagakure, looked down at his son, his greatest joy in life. Formed by the love he held for his wife Kushina, cherished and kept secret from the world, and now forced to carry a heavy burden. Looking to his beloved, I'm sorry, but we both know this is the only way for us to both protect our village and to ensure that we are able to pass on what is necessary to Naruto. What was supposed to be the happiest moment in his life, the birth of his baby boy, had turned into disaster as the masked man attacked him and Kushina, tearing free the Kyuubi. The monster's rampage had killed countless villagers already, and deep in his soul Minato knew the mastermind behind this would not be satisfied by that. His beloved wife had the beast, barely, restrained, and Minato knew with a heavy heart that a new Jinchuriki was required for the fox. And Minato could not ask any other parent to put such a burden upon their child. There was only his son, Naruto. Then he grimly smiled. However, we still have some time for some last preparations. To give our son a fighting chance, and then some. Kushina Namikaze ne Uzumaki's tired eyes looked on in confusion as Minato visibly gathered what remained of his chakra, and created 3 shadow clones who promptly teleported away with the Flying Thunder God technique, and then the original bit his thumb and wove the hand signs for the summoning technique. Gamatora, a small but mature-looking toad, looked up at Minato. What's going on, Minato? 9 Tails is out and chained by your wife, and is that a baby? Is it your baby? I'm sorry, Gamatora, Minato answered, hastily getting his words out. I have one last favor I must ask of you and the toads. An unknown, masked man with the Sharingan attacked us, but the main issue right now is this. Minato paused as one of his clones returned and dispelled, leaving behind a scroll, which the fourth Hokage promptly picked up and handed to Gamatora. When my son is ready, please give this to him. Gamatora carefully picked up the scroll, noting the complex seals that locked it shut. What is it? But it was Kushina who spoke up as she recognized it. Everything that we have to give to our son. Every secret, weapon, and technique we could think of to help him find his path in life. Just in case we wouldn't live to teach it to him ourselves. Gamatora gaped at the scroll in his hands, knowing that whoever possessed would have the potential to rise to be a giant in the shinobi world. Doubtless someone like Minato had started such a project not only long before he had even married Kushina, but even before he had become a join. The man would have been well aware of all the enemies, both domestic and international, that he and Kushina had made as they rose through the ninja ranks upon piles of corpses. Shaken by the trust his old friend had placed upon him, Gamatora nodded and swore to them both in the strongest oaths of the toads that he would prove worthy of their trust. Then in a puff of smoke returned to Mount Myaboku with his precious treasure. Sensing his predecessor, the third Hokage, rapidly approaching, even if the man was still too far away to see what was happening, Minato was about to begin the seals for the dead demon-consuming seal, when he heard something surprising, his wife chuckling? Confused by her levity, he looked over and noted the nasty glint in her eyes. I just realized where you sent your other clones. That man has one of your seals on, doesn't he? Minato did not return her smile, yet his piercing, cold eyes were answer enough. Anyone who threatened those most precious to him would suffer the consequences. Unknown location. Obito Uchiha seethed as he stumbled back into his base as he rematerialized, only now fully realizing how in all those years his oh-so-adored sensei had never shown his students what he was really capable of. If not for his enhanced body, Obito would be dead already. Was I too cocky? No, he was just more adaptable than I thought. If he had succeeded, the destruction that the Kyuubi would have continued to wreak upon Konohagakure would have set everything necessary in motion. Neither Zetsu nor the hidden bloody mist intelligence had made any further progress in ferreting out the location of more of the tailed beasts, forcing Obito to try and cause a fourth shinobi war to smoke them out. Unfortunately, that plan had failed, thanks to Sensei's interference, stealing away Obito's control over the tailed beast, and forcing him to retreat. It wasn't as if any of the lives lost mattered, they would all be brought back with the Moon Knight plan. Of course, now that Sensei knows about my existence it will be more difficult. There's a chance the fox will still kill him, but that's unlikely. No, I'll have to find a way to do it, and quickly, before he starts his own plans. But how? Suddenly, pain stabbed through Obito, and behind his mask he looked in horror into the eyes of Minato Namikaze. Did you really think you could get away so easily? His failed sensei bit out, digging the bloody kunai in deeper. I may not be able to finish what the first Hokage started, but this'll cripple you forever. The information Madara Uchiha had downloaded into Obito's mind via Jinjutsu screamed that this was just a distraction, and he quickly used Kamui to make himself intangible. Too late. The tip of the second Shadow Clone's Rasengan impacted against the back of Obito's head, even as the rest phased through. Simultaneously, as a precaution in case even a physical blow could not kill the man he suspected to be Madara Uchiha, the first Shadow Clone slammed a seal onto his foe. Setsu clones attacked from below and behind, preventing either versions of Minato from seeing what had happened, yet they still sent back what they knew to their original. Thus the fourth Hokage bitterly smiled in triumph as he finished the jutsu that would consume his soul, and place a heavy burden upon his child. Knowing that at the very least he had bought the shinobi world, and more importantly Naruto, a little more time. Helplessly, Black Zetsu could only stare in horror as his chief pawn opened his eyes, and someone else seemed to stare back at him. Land of Fire. Konohagakure. Outside the village's walls. A slight smile was all Minato needed to convey to Kushina that the matter was dealt with. Now. No more distractions. Now was the time. Husband and wife, their eyes remained locked onto each other, even as Minato's hands flew through the signs to call upon a god of death. This was it. Land of Fire. Konohagakure. Hokage Tower. The next day. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the god of ninja, the professor, and unfortunately, at least to him, the reinstated third Hokage, looked wearily down at the baby resting in his arms. The baby boy he had failed. Kushina's pregnancy had been carefully hidden. During the later stages of her pregnancy, she was kept hidden away from all but her closest friends, with ANBU Black Ops carrying out missions afar while disguised as her. The devastation the Nine Tails caused had even sadly ensured an ample number of infant corpses to fake the death of her child if necessary. In this, Hiruzen was in agreement with his closest advisors. The child of a Kage was deemed too valuable a target for the potential they represented, to be idly revealed to the world. Even his own son, Asuma Sarutobi, had only been allowed to use his true name in public when he was 8 years old, and already showing his genius. Except that the rest of their suggestions, the plan that Naruto should be raised as an orphan, Hiruzen could already see where this would lead. The horrors the boy would experience. Every argument had been tried, yet this was the only compromise the various clan leaders, and the few civilian representatives so powerful not even a military dictator could ignore, could come to. Of course, they only saw the threat he posed as the vessel of the demon fox, not the person he truly was. The third Hokage was hampered by the need to keep key aspects of Naruto's life secret from them all, and he could not think of any viable alternatives. Grief and instability in Kakashi and Jiraiya meant they could not raise the boy. Even worse, one of the two Jonin who had accompanied the third Hokage to witness the sealing and last act of Minato and Kushina, in a suicidal moment of idiocy, Hiruzen had taken uncomfortable satisfaction in labeling the man's death as suicide by Sannin, had blabbed out an accurate description of Naruto for the rest of villagers to hear and disseminate. They would know precisely which boy held the 9 tails within. I'm sorry, Naruto, this is what it has to be for now, but I will find a way to make it better. I swear upon the will of fire. Yuzushi Ogakure. 16 years later. Hakiyuki, Jonin captain of the reborn village hidden in whirlpools, walked towards the figure sitting on the edge of the cliff. Once Haku's unwilling master, then student, friend, and finally brother by choice, Naruto Uzumaki had grown into a man who had accomplished miracles. They are coming then. Naruto gave a slow, sad nod. When he had fled his home all those years ago, he had known that it would come to this. The 9 tails sealed within him was too valuable to the hidden leaf, and Naruto knew far too many secrets. Yes, the 16-year-old had known that conflict with his old home was inevitable, even as he tried to prevent it. He had merely hoped to keep it from spilling out in open war. Even now, his various shadow clones throughout his spy network, and those taking in reports from Hidden Whirlpool's intelligence department, continued to send him updates of the oncoming storm. I tried to avoid this, present myself as a valuable ally, hoped they would stay true to their philosophies of peace. That my friends that still lived there would be able to help me enough. But it seems it was all for nothing. As bitter as some of his memories of his former home were, there were still good and warm ones, and overall, life had been good. It had even been improving significantly towards the end as he had made new friends within Konohagakure. Any further ruminations by Naruto were cut off as someone else joined the two young men, dropping down from the sky. Fu, the 7 tails Jinchuriki, casually walked up to Naruto and dropped down to sit beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. Naruto, you've done all that you can. Your job now is to protect our village and those who live within it. All of the people who believe in you. When his only response was a vague grunt in reply, she sighed before trying again. You don't have to kill them, not at first and not if they get the message. Just don't forget who we're really fighting against. Danzo. Only years of mastering his temper made it possible for Naruto quell his fury. Yes, this conflict has indeed been inevitable. Obsessed with Pax Konoha, Danzo would have been an enemy of Naruto regardless of whatever choices he had made in his life, even if he had been able to stay with the Hidden Leaf. Their philosophies were just too different. The fact that Naruto suspected Danzo of deliberately working to leave Naruto emotionally vulnerable did not help matters, and out of all of Naruto's personal enemies, Danzo was the only man he held absolutely no respect for. And given the grade of monsters that could still be found within the Akatsuki, that was saying something. For Danzo, the Hidden Whirlpool was a threat to the Hidden Leaf's status as a great nation, and his last chance to prove the validity of his future vision for the village as the sixth Hokage. He would send everything he had to destroy Naruto, including his human puppets. Born from a Faustian bargain with the captured Akatsuki, Sasori of the Red Sand, Danzo was creating immortal, emotionless soldiers, possessing far less weaknesses than normal humans. The madness of Root had to be stopped, discredited, and above all else, as soon as possible while the rest of the continent's militaries were still in turmoil over the loss of most of the tailed beasts, as well as their other problems. Speaking of which, Naruto mused, and then spoke out loud to Haku and Fu, have the scouts stand by, and assemble your special squads. The Akatsuki will be standing by to make their move. They'll want to strike when we in Konoha are at our most vulnerable when fighting each other. Haku sighed. Are you sure this is what we should do? He asked. It was not hesitation that made him question his orders, but the knowledge that whatever happened next would irrevocably change the world. As ruthless as he could be at times, Haku still wished for an alternative, lest the ninja world collapse into ceaseless violence. I know it's not the best choice, Naruto growled. That what we're doing is all but insane. Except that given everything that's led us to this point, it's the best of all the choices we have left. This is our last chance to stop it from all coming apart. Then his voice dropped until it was almost whispering. Our last chance to make it right. Then he stood up, spine stiff with conviction. So in the end, there is only one thing we can do. What? Fu asked quizzically. Protect those precious to ourselves. Trust in our friends and family. And keep everyone from realizing how much we are really just rolling the dice and betting large. Then his eyes sparkled. But we will win this. Believe it. Haku gave a small nod, and turned around to head back, while behind him, his leader disappeared in the blink of an eye. Land of Fire. Konohagakure. Hokage Tower. 12 years after Naruto's birth. So Iruka-sensei's going to be alright? It had been a rather hectic night, reflected the third Hokage. What with Naruto being tricked by Mizuki into committing treason. Fortunately, it had all worked out better than he could have imagined, and now his surrogate grandson impatiently standing in front of his desk as he waited for news about Yumino Iruka. Yes, Naruto, the third Hokage reassured him with a grandfatherly smile as he locked away the forbidden scroll. The medics assured me that he'll be right as rain in just a few days. I'm very proud of how you handled yourself out there against Mizuki, by the way. Iruka was right, you've proven yourself as a ninja. Blushing a little even as he beamed, Naruto proudly fingered his new leaf forehead protector that had once been Iruka's until he had proved himself. He. Yep. Wanting to broach the topic before Naruto did, to show his concern, Hiruzen Sarutobi sat down in his chair with a more serious look. And Naruto, I'm sorry that you had to find out that way about the Kyuubi. Naruto blinked at that, but quickly put on another bright smile. No worries. I'm sure you had your reasons. And it's not gonna stop me from being Hokage. Believe it. But the third Hokage had still seen the brief emotions in his eyes, including the pain. I'm sure you will, he praised, yet I'm still so very sorry that this happened to you. It was always my intention for you to learn the truth, but never like this. I wanted you to find your own path as a ninja before making you aware of this burden. So that you would have a chance to prove to yourself and everyone else that you were more than just a cage holding back our greatest nightmare. A compliment and a declaration of faith, which seemed to be working, Sarutobi decided. The truth is always best, even if it is not the entire truth. That, however, can wait for later. Thanks, old man. And I will. Naruto cried out. I'll surpass you. And then have all of the people of this village acknowledge how awesome I am. Very good, Naruto. I look forward to it, the Hokage promised, his cheerful expression becoming fake as he felt an old pain. Yes, the will of fire burns brightly within you, just like your parents. Brightly enough that maybe you will be ready for the truth about them before I die. Coast of the Land of Fire, across from the Land of Waves. A few weeks later, Naruto tried to stay still as he and the rest of Team 7 waited for the boat to approach the shore that would take them to Tizuna's homeland, where the bridge builder was to finish his finest creation. The man had, eventually, after the attack by those two missing men from the puddle, come through with the truth of his mission. Tizuna, along with the childish enthusiasm of his students, had managed to convince Kakashi, who dramatically demonstrated his power in effortlessly dealing with those attackers, to help him, while bringing along his genin students. As for Naruto, he was determined to prove to everyone, including himself, what he was really capable of, especially after he had frozen up against the two demon brothers. I'll show them all. I'll beat down anyone who comes at us, and show Sasuke Baka what I'm really capable of, and Sakura will be so impressed. I bet it will even make Kakashi show me some cool ninjutsu to bring me even closer to being Hokage. Besides, we're off to rescue a country from a ruthless tyrant. I can't wait to tell Iruka-sensei and the old man. Stuff like that will make everyone notice me and say that I should be the next Hokage. Sasuke Uchiha was just as eager as his idiot teammate. Every day, every available hour, he had dedicated himself to growing stronger, pushing himself to bridge the gap that man held over him in age and experience. He had tried to graduate earlier to enter real combat as soon as possible, except that since the last Great Ninja War, the Academy had rarely graduated kids early during peacetime, and had abolished that policy altogether after that night. Finally, though, Sasuke had a chance to test himself in the field and make an accurate assessment on where he stood. Best of all, his clash with the Demon Brothers, two Chunin who were bigger, older, and more experienced, had given positive results. If Kakashi had not butted in, he probably even would have beaten them both. Although Sasuke was willing to concede that regardless of his superior skill, a single error could have meant being cut by one of those poison weapons, so perhaps it was for the best. Now, though, the tests were only going to get harder. As it should be. The only question is if these other two will get in my way or not, and everything they've done so far indicates they will only be a nuisance. Neither was even able to move during that attack. Sakura, well, she just kept going over in her head how fantastic her beloved Sasuke-kun had been. His speed, his skill, his utter coolness. Any thoughts about how abysmal her own contribution had been were overlooked. Besides, they were still just genin, right? Sakura knew the whole point of being here was for them to learn how to handle stuff like this. Right. As for Kakashi Hatake, leader of this merry band of misfits called Team 7, he kept his own feelings on the matter hidden. Posture relaxed, and his only visible eye projecting a detached demeanor. While Tizuna had told his story of woe, Kakashi had been keeping a close eye on the reactions of the so-called demon brothers as they sat tied up, to help confirm the old man's story. Afterwards, a quick jolt of lightning chakra, which had suitably impressed his little genin, had knocked them out. Then Kakashi had left a note with the two wannabes, aware that a patrol would be coming by the area in the not-too-distant future. No, there were no troubles behind them. What lay ahead was the problem, since the next assassination attempt was likely to be far more serious. And then there was Naruto. Kakashi had watched the boy from afar, but Kakashi was now coming to suspect that distancing himself from him had caused greater scars for his sensei's son than he imagined. The social isolation the boy had endured had even stunted his development as a ninja. For as much as he wanted to be Hokage, it was still only a step in his primary goal of being noticed, of having his existence acknowledged. So he would spend most of his time pulling stunts, like playing pranks, or running around and kill me orange despite being a ninja. Maybe it was the Academy's fault? Were they emphasizing too much on cool ninjutsu like spitting fire, instead of quietly sneaking up on someone sleeping to slit their throat, when he could have been studying and training? Maybe if there had been someone else in Naruto's life, someone to help him, motivate, support him, or even gently yet firmly push him back in line, things could have been different. Not that we haven't tried to give him that, except each time something interfered with that. It's really fascinating how often something comes up to spoil those plans. Not that Kakashi could prove anything, especially since those problems had come from so many different sources, and neither he nor the Hokage could find any evidence of coordination between them. It was even possible that some of those issues were as innocent as they appeared. Something still smells rotten, though. Still, as Naruto progresses, if there is something sinister behind this, then they'll have to come into the open more, and we'll catch them. And once Naruto is strong and mature enough to learn about his family, his legacy, then I'm sure things will improve for him. As it was, being in Team 7 was only marginally helping the situation. Naruto did now have people acknowledging him on a daily basis, and the effect of this showed, yet it was not entirely healthy. Kakashi could not be anything more than a teacher and commander, someone who might have to send Naruto to his death, and not the father figure Naruto so desperately wanted. Even being a male role model was out, since Kakashi was self-aware enough to know that he was too damaged to be a positive one. Iruka remained more of an older brother Naruto now saw less of, and the third Hokage was both too old, and usually too busy. Sakura's responses to Naruto's action tended to be violent, but because she actually was responding to him, he kept coming back. His social isolation even making him feel a romantic attraction to her due to the fact it was at least some attention. As for Sasuke, things just got more complicated there. Kakashi and other Anbu had noted how fixated Naruto had been on Sasuke after the Uchiha massacre, seeing someone else who was also all alone in life and who Naruto emphasized with. Unfortunately, Sasuke's obsession with killing his older brother, Itachi, left no time for friends. So instead Naruto was focused on becoming Sasuke's rival, so that the young genius would acknowledge him. In Kakashi's eye, the incident when Naruto had stabbed his hand only highlighted the seriousness of the situation. Naruto's lack of concern with self-injury, and his failure to notice how abnormally fast he was already healing, were all signs of a serious lack of concern for himself, as well as a complete inexperience of how quickly other people healed due to a lack of interaction to actually learn that. Even worse, no one else in Team 7 had been particularly upset on Naruto's behalf. Yes, they had been shocked that he had taken such an extreme measure, but neither Sakura nor Sasuke had been overly worried for his personal health while he had a kunai jammed nearly all the way through his hand. As for Kakashi, while he was mildly disappointed that Naruto had frozen up, he was not surprised. Unlike Sasuke, Naruto had never been in a life-and-death situation until just recently, with Mizuki. Such a reaction on his first mission was perfectly understandable. Demonstrating his commitment via such grievous self-harm had been a little unnerving, although Kakashi had tried to just play it off, yet it was still good to see Naruto's spirit was undaunted. Sasuke's single-minded focus on revenge was another reason Kakashi was stressing teamwork exercises over developing his genin as fighters and killers. This was a philosophy that Konoha stressed, and the fact was that Sasuke had too much potential to be wasted because he charged in alone and missed the kunai coming from his blind spot. He somehow assumed that he could develop the skills necessary to kill Itachi all on his own, without anyone being there to support him and help counter Itachi's own abilities. It was especially laughable because Sasuke's own skills so far were merely inferior versions of Itachi's, meaning he would never be able to surprise his more experienced foe. There was also Sasuke's assumption that he would somehow stumble across Itachi, since Kakashi's covert observations had given no indication that the boy had developed any skills to actually track down one of the most notorious criminals in modern history. A man who had casually avoided the hunter ninjas sent after him for so long, that the third Hokage had eventually accepted defeat and called them back. Only teammates could balance out Sasuke's own talents, and draw out his true potential. Regrettably, Kakashi knew that if he brought that to the boys' attention in such a blunt way, then they would only be viewed as pawns, and thus weaken the group as a whole. Sasuke had to on his own initiative learn and accept this. The only problem was that he did not respect Sakura or Naruto enough yet to understand this. Hopefully time would correct that, and perhaps this mission would help that as they were thrown into danger together. Perceived danger at any rate, since Kakashi had little intention of letting such threats actually reach them. Sakura was a far more straightforward and normal case. She had entered into a life she was not really prepared for, but one of the reasons Kakashi had agreed to a C-rank mission was to see how his cute little genin reacted to their beloved sensei and role model butchering a bunch of bandits, while splattering the audience with blood and gore. A little more humane than sending them right into danger in a sink-or-swim manner, the lives of bandits and similar scum did not deserve consideration, and their psychological reactions would give him a good idea on whether or not he should let them continue as ninja. Oh well, as it was, actually spending time with her crush for a prolonged period would inevitably rub off some of the shine on her obsession with him. Fangirls tended to lose their idealism after seeing object of their desires get as dirty and smelly as them from camping in the woods for days on end. Not to mention she might finally catch on that Sasuke was uninterested in romance right now. Mental trauma aside, he was 12 after all. Truthfully, the only reason the demon brothers were still alive was because it was not every day possible sources of new intelligence conveniently delivered themselves right outside your village. But this might be a little too extreme. No, I will protect them. I'm Kakashi Hatake of the Sharingan Eye, and I doubt Gato will have any rabble strong enough to challenge me. No need to trouble the third Hokage with reinforcements. Besides, a little hostile killing intent will also be a good measuring stick. Mount Myaboku. Resting in his home amongst all the other toads, Gamatora mediated in thought. For years he had covertly done his duty, and it was becoming apparent that his friend's dying wish might be for naught. The forces opposing Minato's son were too great. When he had sworn to this task for the fourth Hokage, he had failed to realize the obstacles he would face in getting the scroll to Naruto. The first and foremost problem lay in that the boy was still not ready. Presenting the scroll to him before he had spent some time in the ninja academy had seemed unwise, since he would lack the know-how to actually use the secrets the scroll contained. So Gamatora had laid low, carefully gathering information from toads who associated with Jiraiya. While he was disappointed that Jiraiya had been deemed incapable of caring for his godson, by both himself and other parties including the third Hokage, the toad sage kept busy protecting the boy from afar. Repeatedly the man had intercepted and discredited any intelligence gathered by foreign nations regarding the identity of the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, as well as any superficial resemblance between the Leaf's chief prankster and pariah, and Minato Namikaze. Kakashi, the fourth apprentice, had been active in hunting down these spies, ruthlessly exterminating any threats to his sensei's legacy. Gamatora had also gained further information by using Mount Myaboka's distant body water to travel to the village and check up on the boy and those around him. The tragedy was, though, that the boy had grown up in near utter social isolation. No one dared harm the boy, or even be caught thinking of it, after what Jiraiya had done to the man who had criminally revealed Naruto's burden to the world. But at the same time, no one could be forced to approach the boy, talk to him, or even smile at him. It was clear the loneliness was bearing the boy down, robbing him of social cues and knowledge, and leading him to developing some unhealthy ideas. If I gave him the scroll right now, it would be a disaster, Gamatora reflected with a heavy heart. He would just show it to the world in a desperate attempt to get more people to acknowledge him. Or even worse, if Naruto's suffering was greater than I suspect, the information contained within the scroll would give the young Jinchuriki, and he now knows that is his one, as well as why people hate him so much, the opportunity to wreak bloody vengeance upon the village if he ever snapped. Doubtless it would provide ironic satisfaction for the preteen, that if he was going to be shunned and treated as a monster, then let him be one, humanity be damned. And the legacy of the fourth Hokage would be death. Death for many villagers, and the eventual death of Naruto when the ninja finally killed him. All assuming, of course, that Naruto did not try to unlock his prison and unleash the nine tails before he fell. Something has to change, Gamatora thought with dismay, and soon. But I don't know what to do. Name: Hakuyuki. Alias: Haku of the Ice Style. Village: formerly Kirigakure, Nunikin, Yuzushiogakure Umbu Captain. Notes: former and only apprentice of Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the bloody mist who taught him all the Mist Hunter Ops secrets. Former teacher and present right-hand man of Naruto Uzumaki of the Golden Legion, aka the Demon Lord. Extract from a bingo book, shortly after the revival of Yuzushiogakure. Land of Waves. Battle beside a small lake. It seems appropriate that the rumblings that shook the ninja world to its core should have begun in such a small and insignificant nation, one that everyone else had dismissed. The Land of Waves. It was here, upon blood-splattered battlefields, that new legends were born, and where these defining individuals took their first true steps on these new paths. And it all began with Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the bloody mist, battling against the equally famous Kakashi Hatake of the Sharingan Eye, aka the Copy Ninja. Unbeknownst to the Leaf Ninja, however, Zabuza had an ace up his sleeve, as his living tool silently watched events unfold from within the surrounding foliage. Said tool went by the name Hakuyuki, and he was the willing servant of the demon, ready to die in his service if necessary. The Watcher silently listened to what was occurring, catching the occasional glimpse through the rising fog as his master summoned it. They had been hired by Gato the shipping magnate, to kill a bridge builder named Tazuna, in order to maintain the former's trade monopoly over the Land of Wave. Unfortunately, Tazuna had gone to the village hidden in leaves for an escort, and was under the protection of Jonin Captain Kakashi Hatake. Oh, and 3 kids who were doubtlessly his genin students. It was clear Zabuza-sama was beginning his basic psychological warfare stratagem against Hatake, while also beginning the timeless game of clones and substitution. The rules were simple: both parties would switch places at high speeds with whatever nearby item they could, while also working to make sure that any apparently lethal blow really only hit one of their doppelgangers, all to catch their opponent off guard. Cat and mouse, Kumogaku roulette, and chicken all in one, and the first one to be gutted was the loser. For this was how higher-ranking ninja tended to fight, using jutsu that were mastered to the point few or no hand signs were necessary, high speeds, every scrap of experience, careful management of chakra during high-stress situations, skill and knowledge with various clone jutsu, and repeated use of the substitution technique while simultaneously trying to locate and/or anticipate your opponent's new locations while they used it themselves. In these kinds of battles, especially near the decisive end, either side could be assured that the so-called final blow had actually connected, lest it be another clone or substitution. From what little Haku could gain from enhancing his senses with chakra, and past experience with Zabuza-sama, it appeared that Hataki had now confirmed that Zabuza-sama was a water-style user, liked to rely on low-level clones, had some measure of Zabuza-sama's skill with his sword, and knew that the man's reputation for silent killing was well-deserved. Zabuza-sama's first fight with a Sharingan user was already giving him some insight into how it worked, including how the mist he was creating with the hiding in the mist technique was apparently not strong enough to block its effects. Hataki's speed when coming to the aid of his genin was also telling. More importantly, Haku himself was learning all he could from the glimpses of the battle, in case he was forced to intervene in the fight. Defeating Hataki himself was unthinkable, for Zabuza-sama had to prove to himself that he was strong enough to defeat the enemy Jonin. Otherwise, how did he expect to defeat someone as strong as Yagura, the fourth Mizukage? No, Haku would only become involved in order to fake his master's death, and only so that Zabuza-sama could return stronger than ever. Finally ending the annoying dance, Zabuza kicked Hataki into the nearby lake. Judging by the speed and distance achieved, however, the swordsman knew that the copy ninja had gone with the flow of the kick to gain more distance, doubtlessly planning to draw his enemy away from his charges. Against a man of Hataki's reputation, and from the skills already displayed, Zabuza would be expected to prioritize on the greatest threat, without sparing even an instance to target the old man he had been hired to assassinate, or the brats. And of course Hataki had managed to drop some caltrops as a trap, forcing Zabuza to hesitate. But he's a cocky fool if he plans to lure me into a terrain I specialize in weaponizing. Faster than Hataki could react, Zabuza trapped the false legend in the water prison technique. It's over, Haku knew. Zabuza-sama is also pouring his own chakra into the jutsu to prevent Hataki from using any of those lightning jutsu he is so famous for. He may have the physical conditioning to hold his breath for a long time, yet Zabuza-sama's chakra levels are well up to the task of maintaining the jutsu long enough. All that is left is killing Tazuna, and those genin, so no witnesses are available for the hidden leaf. Hopefully I can convince Zabuza-sama to spare the children. Perhaps if I point out the retribution their village may try to bring down upon us. Maybe he's already concluded this, since he's only toying with them, giving them a chance to run. It was still sad though, when the leaf genin prepared themselves to fight a monster who outclassed them to a ridiculous degree. With mild surprise, Haku observed the short, blonde-haired boy rally his teammates, despite the orders to flee that his superior was desperately yelling at them, expending his precious air in a vain attempt to try and save his young genin. The kid definitely had guts though, yelling his defiance, and insulting a man who was making a point so far not to kill any of them. Skill and brains, not so much. He made that charge against the Jonin captain, even if it was just a water clone, to retrieve his headband? To help him in his declaration that he would be Hokage? Well, that's interesting at least. The boy's use of a clone technique able to make so many solid copies was more fascinating, however, especially since Haku could not confirm what their composition was. Not that it made any real difference, with the copies quickly being dispelled with a masterful demonstration by Zabuza-sama's, the executioner's blade. Undaunted even as he was sent skidding across the ground, the kid, Naruto Uzumaki, was it? Passed a large Fuma shuriken to his teammate, the black-haired boy, one who had an interesting clan crest on his back. Regardless, he chose to throw the shuriken at the real Zabuza-sama, not the water clone who had been humiliating them. There is a second shuriken hidden underneath the first for a shadow shuriken technique. While hardly enough to even hinder Zabuza-sama, it is still a better plan than I thought. Decent skill too, to throw it like that, explains why he was the one given the shuriken. There we go, and what? Haku stared in disbelief as Zabuza effortlessly caught the first shuriken and jumped over the second one, only for the latter to disappear in a flash of smoke to reveal the young Uzumaki trying to blindside his target from behind. A masterful plan, making it possible for a genin to actually cut one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. But what was that technique? He had actually changed his form into a different solid object, as opposed just an illusionary cover? Who is that boy? Wondered Haku. He acts like a suicidal idiot, but has potential. Unfortunately, if he kept rushing in like that, he would be killed before having the chance to unlock it. Caught up in surprise, the young ice release user had almost missed Kakashi breaking free of his prison when an enraged Zabuza-sama removed his arm from the ball of water, and the copy ninja charged forward to protect his student, releasing all of his killing intent to unnerve his target. Naruto, the Jonin sensei praised after chucking said boy towards dry land where the rest of his precious Team 7 was, "Your scheme was brilliant, you've matured, all of you." A giggling Naruto went on to elaborate exactly how he had carried out his scheme. "I'll have to teach him to not spell out his plans to the enemy," Kakashi noted. "So," mused Zabuza, "you made me fly into such a rage that I unraveled the jutsu holding the water prison together." "No! You didn't drop your own jutsu. It was broken, from the outside. Deciding that the Sharingan genjutsu he was carefully placing on Zabuza while they murderously glared at each other was ready enough, Kakashi decided to get down to business. Just so you know, the same jutsu won't work on me twice. Jumping backwards, Kakashi roared at the man who had dared to try and kill his students. You said it yourself, Zabuza. I am a man famed for copying 1,000 techniques, and it is time for you to understand just what that means. Humph, and how many of those are just useless deranked ones? I don't count those. Like a vengeful wolf, Kakashi went on full offensive. He flashed through the hand seals for water release, water bullet technique, causing a powerful torrent of water to burst out of the lake at his side, speeding directly at Zabuza. The assassin countered with more water clones, which closed in on Kakashi, and while several were destroyed as Kakashi redirected his attack, enough were able to dodge around it to reach their target. Knowing they would lack the power of the original, Kakashi chose to dispatch them with only a kunai, deliberately leaving his back exposed as a feint, even as he wove around the slashing swords to dispel the doppelgangers. Not fooled by this false opportunity, the real Zabuza chose to attack from in front and below, bursting out of the lake while swinging the executioner's blade as he planned to cut through both his clones and the copy ninja, unaware of what his target had anticipated this. Sorry Zabuza, you might be stronger and faster than me, except it's not enough to get past my Sharingan. And as an added bonus, 8 gates, first gate, gate of opening. Zabuza could only swear to himself in disbelief as Kakashi countered his underwater ambush, somehow possessing the strength to block the swordsman's massive blade with nothing but a kunai knife. Straining against the leaf ninja, the ex-mist was suddenly thrown further off balance, as the lake seemed to dissolve into a whirlpool. Zabuza struggled to regain his wits as the lake seemed to consume itself, as he rapidly backpedaled away. What? No! He's using a clone and earth jutsu to drain the lake. For all that he was a skilled leader, a master swordsman and assassin, the demon of the mist's water jutsu skills were not up to par, hence why had waited to ambush them beside a pre-existing source of water that he could draw upon. Kakashi on the other hand was primarily a lightning user, who also had skill with earth techniques, meaning that he was altering the geography to favor himself, especially since he would not have to worry about the water conducting any of his electricity in some unwanted way. More worrisome, for some strange reason Zabuza felt a little weird. Using a brief breather as the two parties separated after another clash of weapons, and ducking under a brace of shuriken Kakashi had thrown, Zabuza flared his chakra in case he was under a genjutsu, but felt no difference. Something is still off, but what? Poison? This is bad, Haku grimly thought with wide eyes still hidden from sight. Zabuza-sama cannot look away from the Sharingan. It is almost as if he's under some sort of genjutsu. No, wait, he is. Hatake must be skilled enough to make one subtle enough that Zabuza-sama cannot realize he's under one, and still strong enough that routine disruptions of his chakra network are not working. Perhaps a multilayer genjutsu? Zabuza has to disappear back into the mist if he wants to win, except that now that his temper is raised, he is too fixated on direct combat. Realizing the likely outcome of this fight, Haku began to stealthily advance, aiming for a tree that would give him a view overlooking the fight, while trying to predict where the overall flow of the battle would shift to. Meanwhile, Zabuza-sama exchanged a water release, water dragon bullet with Kakashi's equally massive one. Zabuza-sama feels he has learned enough about Hatake, and with his anger intensifying his impatience, he's bringing out the big guns, and Hatake is matching him. No, copying him. It's ever so slight, but his Sharingan is allowing him to mimic whatever physical moves Zabuza-sama carries out. What followed was chilling for Haku as he witnessed his master be made vulnerable to Hatake's own psychological warfare, using his mimicry to unnerve his foe and then act like he was reading his thought by completing Zabuza-sama's own sentences. Knowing the leaf ninja was preparing his final blow, Haku pulled out 2 Saban needles, preparing himself to fake his master's death by targeting his neck to put him into a comatose state. It was risky, but Haku had done this before, allowing his master to return to kill his foes. Once to even snatch the bounty the man was trying to collect for killing Zabuza-sama. Haku's master had been chortling for days over that one. And if Hatake smelled a rat, tired as he was after such a grueling fight, Haku should be able to beat him handily. Zabuza-sama would forgive him. Kakashi Hatake of the Sharingan. I felt a small piece of satisfaction as he finally maneuvered Zabuza into a checkmate, using multiple illusions to manipulate him. The man had called upon his strongest water jutsu, water release, great waterfall technique, yet Kakashi's superior vision and psychological warfare let him read what motions Zabuza would make before he had actually carried them out, making it easy for Kakashi to cast his attack first. The crushing force of the water sending the man's battered body careening through the air to strike a tree trunk. Pulling out some kunai, Kakashi prepared a standard spread to finish off a living legend, aiming 3 for the torso and 1 for the neck. Then he stopped as 2 Saban needles suddenly appeared in the swordsman's throat, seemingly out of nowhere. Glancing up, and surging his chakra in case of a genjutsu, Kakashi blinked in surprise at the sight of a masked member of the Bloody Mist's Anbu Hunter Ops. The young man offered a polite apology for interfering, claiming he wanted to make the kill himself. Based upon his build and voice, he was dealing with someone only little older than Kakashi's own students, except he had still risen to claim one of the most elite positions within the ninja world. An order entrusted to hunt down their prey alone, taking down any Nukenin they encountered without anyone watching their back. He's not your average kid, that's for sure. I'm putting up a good bluff, but I'm nearing my limit. And the longer this goes on, the longer I have to keep my Sharingan active and draining more chakra. That Zabuza's dead is all that matters. I just won't be able to take his corpse back for study. Carefully approaching the man in question, while keeping an eye out on the motionless Anbu hunter, Kakashi checked Zabuza's pulse for half a minute, confirming that he was indeed a corpse. Unexpectedly, Naruto ran up to them, yelling his confusion at who this masked stranger was, and if his casual killing of the demon of the Bloody Mists meant that the members of Team 7 sucked. Still carefully keeping an eye on the potential new threat, Kakashi walked over and quieted Naruto down. "Oh. Well, you have my sympathy," he said to his student. "I can see where a thing like that would be hard to accept, but it's a fact you'll have to live with. This probably won't be the last time we run into a kid who's both younger than you, and stronger than me." Kakashi could have elaborated on that, yet the best examples of young prodigies from the village hidden in Leaves' recent history were himself, which would be overly arrogant to mention, Itachi Uchiha, unwise to mention for a host of reasons, and Orochimaru, a third bad role model. For his part, Haku, still in his Anbu hunter disguise, jumped down and hefted up Zabuza-sama's unconscious body. A glance had confirmed the Senban had indeed been accurately placed, but this moment of vulnerability was when everything was the most at risk. Fortunately, Hataki's body language indicated he had no interest in a fight. Moreover, based upon the copy ninja's previous behavior, and his present closeness to his blonde genin, it was likely his priority remained protecting his charges from any active threats, not corpse retrieval. "Your battle is over, Leaf, for now. And now I must dispose of the remains," he lied, "lest they give up our secrets to our foes. Well then, I must be off." Land of Waves. A clearing away from Team 7. Having recovered from his death well enough to move, and removed the Senban in his throat, though not enough to be truly mobile, Zabuza looked up to regard his tool. "You saw the entire fight, correct?" Haku gave an affirmative nod. During the fight he had used chakra to enhance his senses to catch every word, since the slightest detail, or mumbled comment could be critical. Indeed, his master could even be trying to discreetly pass an order. While Kakashi Hatake is a formidable foe, from what he displayed he is only a threat if you were to engage him head-on, Zabuza-sama. His students were also interesting. Zabuza scowled at this, except knew that Haku was right. The trick the blonde brat had played on him, with the other boy's help, had been brilliant, and if the former had been slightly more skilled, he could have actually hurt Zabuza when he blindsided him. Hell, if the kid had just one single ranged and offensive C-rank jutsu when I had my back to him, or a better throwing arm, he might even have killed me, that's how unprepared I was. And those jutsu he was using beforehand. The swordsman frowned. The brat had been spewing some nonsense at some point, but Zabuza had only ignored it, concluding that even if he did not kill them all, they could not possibly have anything interesting to say. "What did you discover about them?" "The one with black hair carries the clan symbol of what I believe is the Uchiha clan on his back. Although I will have to check my scrolls to see if I can verify. As for the other boy, how much did you hear him say?" Zabuza gave no response to the tactful rebuke, since he always stressed the importance of full and honest feedback. He identified himself as Naruto Uzumaki. At this Zabuza paused and rewrapping his face bandages. In the ninja world, empowered weapons with unique abilities, like Orochimaru's Kusanagi sword, were priceless. The art of crafting them practically lost during the brutal Warring States period, since craftsmen capable of creating such artifacts were prime targets. The last recorded individual capable of such was the second Hokage. However, the majority of the remaining weapons were owned by the village hidden in Bloody Mists, wielded by the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist, a group Zabuza still considered himself part of. Those particular swords had come from a variety of sources, and some of the present ones were even replacements for ones destroyed during previous battles, yet the most common source was the seal-loving Uzumaki clan of Yuzushiogakure, the village hidden by whirlpools. They had either been given as part of peace treaties after wars, or pried from their dead hands on the battlefield. Alas, there were no more Uzumaki left, following the fall of Yuzushiogakure, at the hands of Iwagakure. Or so Zabuza had thought. Now while it was possible the kid was lying, or had been lied to as he appeared too stupid for subtly, Zabuza suspected it was the truth. Someone like Kakashi Hatake seemed unlikely to tolerate such a deception. Moreover, the brat's fellow student appeared to be an Uchiha. Zabuza was fully confident in his student's memory, another legendarily powerful clan that was supposed to be dead, barring their executioner, that is. Moreover, given Kakashi's use of the Sharingan, that would be a logical placement for what appeared to be the last Uchiha. What did that say about the pink-haired girl? Was her behavior just an act to catch him off guard? Interesting, very interesting indeed, Zabuza mused. Still, no matter. I'm a ninja with a contract, and I'll fulfill it. Zabuza turned to look up at his apprentice. I failed to look for the shadows and knives that hide underneath the mist, and nearly paid for it with my life, he growled, wincing as his abused body shrieked in pain. That won't happen again. Haku, we need more information. Get it. His tool obediently gave another nod in agreement, doubtless having reached the same conclusion long before Zabuza had. The perfect weapon. Land of Waves. Tizuna's house. A few nights later. Naruto stood quietly outside the room of the little boy named Inari. Apparently Tizuna's grandson, he had been insistent that Naruto and his team were going to die, that no one could defeat Gato and his men. And when Naruto had claimed that he was a hero here to save the day, Inari had flatly denied this, saying that there was no such thing as heroes. With a parting comment about they should leave or they would die here, the brat had left to go to his room. But now, standing outside his door, Naruto could only stand in silence. He had wanted to hit the kid for saying such stupid stuff, yet now all he could focus on was the sound of crying from inside the room. Eventually, Naruto turned and walked off, not knowing how to respond to this. What happened to him? Kanehigakure. Hokage's Tower. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked at the mission briefing scroll in front of him curiously. A routine patrol had encountered 2 tied-up ex-Mist ninja, along with a note from Kakashi. The encrypted letter had detailed what had occurred, his observations of his genin squad's reactions, and changes to the mission parameters. Despite all of this, the man believed that he was more than capable of handling whatever might develop in Wave, and that he did not expect any problems he could not handle himself. Taking a reflective draw on his pipe, the older man considered the situation. On the one hand, Kakashi was an experienced leader, a Jonin captain who had spent time in both the Umbu and later in the regular forces when his psychological evaluations indicated he was being pushed too hard by job. Something about it being unhealthy to have been a child soldier in the thick of all the fighting since he was 6 years old, and then transferred into the Black Ops to carry out various wet work tasks. After the transfer back to the regular forces, Kakashi had continued to distinguish himself in battle. Of course, despite the man's power and success rate, he still had his detractors amongst some of the upper echelons. For while his subordinates had a higher survival rate than the norm, their leader was also willing to abandon his objective if he was too concerned about potential casualties. Too willing to give up, his detractors claimed. Personally, Sarutobi approved, especially since Kakashi would always retreat just long enough to plan anew, and or adjust his roster, and then return to the mission to complete it. In conclusion, the third Hokage was confident that Kakashi would pull out of this mission in Wave if it appeared to be escalating out of control. Although, he could not dismiss the possibility that Kakashi, unused to dealing with fresh genin straight from the academy, might be overestimating them. He could even be overcompensating with Sasuke out of respect for Obito Uchiha. And of course it was always possible he had managed to dig deep enough through his grief to realize who Naruto's parents were, and was overeager to prove the young boy was just as good as they had been. Or that Kakashi hoped successfully helping these boys might quieten at least some of the ghosts that haunted him at night. In the end, the third Hokage decided to leave it to Kakashi to decide, displaying his trust in his subordinate, and to see how a potential fifth Hokage candidate handled the situation. Land of Waves. Tizuna's house. As he slowly recovered, Kakashi began to carefully plan his campaign against whoever Gato sent to kill Tizuna next. A minute after the Umbu hunter had left, and who in hindsight was probably a fake, Kakashi had collapsed from overusing his Sharingan and exhausting too much chakra. It would likely take a week of rest for a full recovery, which was about the same amount of time he calculated it would take Zabuza to recover if he had indeed been put into a death-like state. Additionally, it would take at least a few days for Gato to find some new muscle to send. In the meantime, his genin needed to become stronger, and quickly, to deal with whatever lackeys the former Mist Ninja brought with him. Consequently, Team 7's training schedule would have to be accelerated. So to start, he would have them doing the tree climbing exercise to both improve their chakra control and build up their reserves. Well, I kinda failed in my plan to keep the kids out of this. Still, they surpassed my expectations, so maybe they can handle what is to come. Zabuza was an Umbu hunter captain before joining the Seven Swordsmen, but they still pulled that stunt on him, despite one of them evidently forgetting everything he should have learned in school. I mean, honestly, how could Naruto need a remedial lesson on what chakra is? That's as basic as the importance of stealth, which he's seemingly forgotten about too. Still, they are improving at a phenomenal rate, Kakashi reassured himself. Sure, that I'm just starting to teach them ninjutsu while they are in the middle of an A-rank mission might seem a little irresponsible to some people, except they can clearly handle it. And I'm still clearly stronger than Zabuza anyways. Whatever future threats we face on this mission, they should remain focused on me. All I have to do is make sure my sweet little genin, amazingly there was barely a hint of sarcasm, are strong enough to stay alive long enough for me to take care of business and come help. Land of Waves. Woods, not too far from Tizuna's house. Haku's silent observations had been going well so far, using a combination of ice mirrors to infiltrate and observe, as well as his mastery of stealth to get around even Kakashi Hatake. He had not found out anything too detailed yet, choosing to be extra cautious out of respect and caution of the man's reputation. What had been found out so far had been rewarding though. First, the copy ninja was obviously more injured than he had appeared when Haku had departed. Evidently the Sharingan was very chakra exhausting for him. Also, his genin team appeared to be receiving elementary training in chakra control and building up their stamina. Though it's weird that they're only starting that. They're 12, and are his students. They should have known this long ago. Or is this just how the leaf teaches? Deciding to take a break, Haku went out to gather some herbs to help Zabuza-sama heal. The man should have no more problems after Haku had broken Gato's arm as a warning. Plus, Hatake was still too busy recovering himself to go out scouting. Though he would never admit it to anyone else, messing with people was one of Haku's hobbies, and that included being a girly boy able to throw people around with no discernible effort. His favorite practice though was to dress up like a girl. Not only was it funny to watch people treat him as a helpless, innocent girl, but their reactions when they learned he was really a male were just hilarious. Only Zabuza was not creeped out by it, and that was because he had been around his tool for so long. As long as the dress carried concealed weapons he was fine. Though the man probably took reassurance from the fact that Haku managed to hook up with a bunch of girls fairly often. Of course, Haku made a point of making sure he never got anyone pregnant. No need to leave a trail of children like himself behind. So with that in mind, he got out his makeup kit, and picked out a nice pink kimono, and headed out to look for local medical herbs. After a while of wandering through the woods, gathering the necessary plants, Haku stumbled across an unexpected sight. The self-proclaimed future Hokage, Naruto Uzumaki, who had successfully stood up to the demon of the bloody mist long enough to free his teacher and superior. Someone who had frankly abysmal chakra control based upon previous spying, yet also had the ingenuity to trick Zabuza-sama, as well as some interesting jutsu. Unlike a proper ninja, he was loud in personality and fashion choice, and yet was still able to rise to the challenge to overcome even Zabuza-sama's fearsome aura and killing intent. And now here he was, sleeping in the middle of the forest, when he was supposed to be guarding his client from potential assassins? For that matter, has he really been outside all night? Why hasn't one of his team members come to find him? Is it all an act, or is he really such a mass of contradictions? Slowly, Haku reached out his hand towards the boy. It would be so easy, wouldn't it? Snap his neck like I did Gato's arm. He wouldn't even feel anything. Heh, who am I kidding? Naruto found himself being gently shaken awake, and opened his eyes to what had to be the most beautiful face he'd ever seen. She was telling him in a lovely voice that he would catch his death of cold. He snapped upright to help hide his blush, and then gallantly asked her what she was doing, and if there was any way he could help. The morning slowly went by as Naruto helped the strange girl, who introduced herself as Haku. She was a local girl who lived in the area, and was getting some medicine together to help an injured friend. And used to someone actually listening and responding back to him, Naruto was pleased to talk as they worked. Eventually, their conversation steered towards Gato, and the hardships in the land of Wave. Haku was evasive on this, but eventually she confessed she was an orphan, and had been living both alone, and sufficiently isolated from many of the problems her countrymen faced. You too, huh? Haku blinked in surprise at his statement. I'm also an orphan, and never really fit in anywhere. Most people try to avoid me, or get me to go away. Still, things have really been picking up in my life. Looks like things have been the same for you, if you have a friend to help though. As if she was uncomfortable with where the conversation was going, Haku looked away for a moment, before asking, so what were you doing in the middle of nowhere at the crack of dawn? Training. He burst out with an expression that was somehow simultaneously comical and serious. With a look of surprise, she inquired further, really? That headband you're wearing, are you some kind of ninja? Why, he yelled. Do you think I look like one? Do I? Really? Because I am. Definitely some self-esteem issues, or at the very least an attention seeker. Especially with that bright orange, Haku diagnosed. Wow, that's incredible. To which his mark just chuckled gratefully as his ego was stroked. What are you training for? To build up my strength. But you look so strong and manly already. A shameless lie there, what with the subtle signs of slight malnourishment, and the aforementioned hideous orange clothing. In actual fact, Haku was just saying this because it made being a guy dressed up as a girl even more amusing. Plus, people let more things slip when their boasting was encouraged. Nope. Wrong. Then a little quieter, I need to be a lot stronger than this. Haku just stared in silence for a moment, trying to figure out the person in front of him. While impressing a pretty girl was obviously influencing what he was saying, there did appear to be some noteworthy determination in his eyes. A strength of will that Haku had come to expect from more older and experienced ninja. Trying to dig further, he lead with, but why? To become top dog in my hometown. All the people who used to treat me like dirt will have to say he's the #1 ninja. And right at the moment, I kind of have to prove a point, to a certain person I know. Someone who thinks there are no longer heroes in this world. But I'll prove myself to him by saving this country from Gato, and whoever he sends at me. Again Haku just stared back intensively. There was almost too much raw information in the boy's simple declarations to sort through. He was an orphan who wanted to prove himself to those who had rejected him. Make them acknowledge him. But why would the son of such a famous clan be rejected, especially in the Hidden Leaf? And is his drive coming from his need to simply be noticed by everyone, or does he want to truly prove himself for his own sake? Plus, he still sees ninjas as heroes, people who can only help others and never harm the innocent. Is that what it's like in the Leaf? That their more peaceful philosophies allow them to believe that they are the good guys? And of course, he unknowingly threw down the gauntlet at me, for I and Zabuza-sama will be fighting him and his friends later. What an interesting conversation this is proving to be. All of this flew through his mind in the blink of an eye. Making a snap judgment, the assassin decided he wanted to learn more from Naruto, and chose to open up more on his own life to do so. Are you doing this for the sake of that person, or for your own satisfaction? Naruto just stared back with squinted eyes, a dumb look that fully portrayed his incomprehension. What? It was all so ridiculous, Haku could not but help the girlish giggle that escaped him, causing Naruto to loudly ask what was so funny, while maintaining that stupid squint. Finally, Haku regained his self-control. Do you have anyone special in your life? In hindsight, Haku had to admit that given his deliberately girlish demeanor that could be misconstrued as something flirtatious. Which possibly proved that Zabuza-sama's sadism had rubbed off on him a little bit. Just not in the way his master had wanted. At all. Just thinking of Zabuza-sama in this context make Haku's memories rise to the forefront, oblivious to Naruto's confusion as the young girl stared off into space. His father, a man who had sworn to love and protect them with his very life as long as he lived, had learned that Haku's mother had a bloodline ability. To him now his family had become monsters, and had killed his wife for that, and would have murdered his son too. Instead, the icy power of Haku's heritage had instinctively risen to save him, and stain him with his father's blood. Still lost in though, he found himself reliving his life of loneliness on the streets, unwanted, with no reason to live. Where each waking day was a struggle to not just stay lying on the ground until the end finally came. Until that man appeared, his hands also drenched in blood, both sinners and innocents, giving a worthless orphan a reason to live. To be happy, and the will to face each new dawn. With an effort, Haku pulled himself out of his past to look at Naruto, a boy who might share a similar enough history, and maybe his own personal philosophy, his ninja way, with him. So he calmly and simply said, when people are protecting something truly precious to them, they truly can become as strong as they must be. And with that, Naruto's own experiences came to the forefront, with the example of Iruka and the day Naruto became a full-fledged ninja. Kakashi's words when they faced that eyebrowless freak Zabuza, saying that he would not let any of his comrades die. Examples from stories like the 4th Hokage defeating the 9-tailed fox. Or Inari's dad Kaiza, who Tazuna said believed and lived up to his philosophy protecting something precious to you with all of your strength. Fortunately, Naruto seemed to have still gotten the message. With a grin, he nodded, "Yup. I know all about it." With an answering smile, Haku got up with his basket of herbs and walked away. With a final parting remark, "You will get stronger, and I hope we will see each other again." Taking a trail that would help throw of pursuit, Haku decided that it would be nice to talk to the young blonde again, though maybe next time I should tell him I'm a boy. His reaction should be priceless. Land of Waves. Tizuna's house. Naruto thought back to what Inari and himself had shouted at each other. The little boy was young after all, only 8 years old, perhaps too young to truly come to grips with what had happened to his life. Yet did that give him the right to say what he'd said to Naruto? That because Naruto was always clowning around and having fun, meant he did not know a thing about suffering or loneliness, or whatever else Inari was going through in his life. In that moment, Naruto had let his own mask slip, and had let some of his own pain and hatred be seen as he glared at his target, directing the will that had for years fought to keep his apathy from consuming him at this crying child who had the gall to say that to him. All of those emotions had been channeled into Naruto's voice as he snarled back, "Just keep on crying forever, you idiot. Doing nothing to try and change the situation, while your dad fought to make things better. Like your grandpa is doing now. Thinking that you're suffering more than anyone in the world, when you don't know anything about pain and suffering." After yelling that last part, he had buried all of that back down, and left the house to get back to training, ignoring the cries from Sakura-chan to come back and apologize. Someone like him wouldn't have lasted a day in my life, Naruto growled to himself, but then stopped and reflected, and I shut him down like everyone else has done to me before. Thinking about what Haku had said about protecting those precious to yourself and finding true strength, Naruto realized what had made Iruka precious to him. His teacher had known the whole story of Naruto's life, and had accepted and helped him anyways. Right now, Inari is shutting himself out from those around him, his precious people, who are going through the same pain as the boy, and neither his mom nor grandpa know how to draw him out. Pushing away other people, denying himself the chance to find new precious people. With this in mind, Naruto stepped into action, and went looking for the younger boy. He knew Inari had to want help, before it would work, except Naruto also knew he just had to offer it. To let the boy know others were already offering it. He hesitated as he approached Inari's room, but forced himself to knock on the door. After a moment, the boy answered it, and hesitantly let Naruto in. They just stared at each other in silence for a few moments, before the older one crossed his arms and spoke up at last. "I don't really know what to say, how to tell you what I'm feeling. But I know that I have to try. I shouldn't have shut you down back there, too many people have done that to me before. But what I do know, is that you can't do this to yourself, Inari. You might never feel better again after what you've gone through, but that you must never give up on trying to. Your mom and grandpa want to help you, be there for you. Your grandpa is struggling to ensure that you will have a future here. That no one will have to live their entire lives in a desolate country like the wave is now. Shutting away the world might seem like the best way to not feel any more pain, but is that really what you want? What Kaiser would have wanted for you?" Inari flinched at this, and just shouted back angrily, "Shut up. What do you know anyways? Acting so cool and all like you know what I'm going through," and stopped as he realized he was repeating himself, and then remembered Kakashi's words from last night. Flashback. Naruto grew up without a father, same as you, Kakashi said while sitting down beside Inari. Actually, without any parents. He doesn't remember either one of them. Or have a single friend. His whole life is one big, painful memory. And in all the time I've known him, I've never seen him cry. Or use his troubles as an excuse to sulk, or be a coward. Not once. He always tries his hardest, hoping someone will notice and give him a kind word or a pat on the back. That's his dream, and he's risked his life for it. I think one day he must have just gotten fed up with crying. He understands what it means to be strong. He knows what it costs and what it's worth, just as your father did. And he's still able to smile? Inari thought to himself. Flashback end. While not understanding the reason, Naruto was quick to take advantage of Inari's hesitation. In many ways, I'm jealous of you. At this point, the overwhelmed boy could only stare back in shock. My life hasn't been easy, and you have memories that I will never have, things to cherish. And peoples whose example you can follow. On the other hand, you know that you wouldn't want anyone to feel what you're feeling right now. I can't judge your pain, or try to compare what we're both feeling, every day, but we can try to help each other. I just want you to get back to the point where you feel well. Happy with yourself and how your life is going. And that is why I'm working to protect your grandpa, so that he can do what is necessary to make everything better. You have to stand up again, and take your life back. Lots of people have suffered what you have, but they still learn to get on with their lives. And if you need help doing that, I'm here for you. But more importantly, so is your family. And you're still young, with so much ahead, so, well. At this, Naruto just tapered off, unsure where all of that had come from. Maybe being with Iruka-sensei and the old man Hokage had taught him more than he thought, and he knew that Iruka had managed to put his life back together despite losing both his parents at a young age. The silence stretched on for several minutes, Naruto's sad and old eyes staring back into Inari's equally sad, yet confused ones. Until, finally, the little boy nodded. "Okay," he whispered, "I'll try." And then Naruto smiled. A real smile, not the one he showed the world, to fool it into not realizing how beaten down he could become at times. One that had only shown through in those brief moments of happiness, when he was with the old man Hokage, or when Iruka-sensei acknowledged him. No deception, no small part of him still being resentful at his life, just pure joy. Looking at the bedroom clock, Naruto put his arms in the air and then put his hands behind his head. "Thanks for listening to me ramble on so long. I know it's not easy to hear all that, but let's see what happens. It's late, so good night, Inari." And with that, Naruto walked out and went to his own cot to get some sleep. As for Inari, it took a long time, but eventually he fell asleep as his mind slowly calmed down. As he worked to accept that maybe, just maybe, life could get better after all. Land of Waves. Woods just outside Tazuna's house. Naruto could only sit with his jaw hanging open. He had met Haku again when the boy had been collecting more herbs, this being their third meeting. The totally future Hokage had come to really enjoy these times they got together, as they chatted away about everything under the sun. Haku could not stay too long, having to get back to help her, his friend, but they both had time for a few laughs. As he was walking away this time though, Haku, without even turning his head to look at Naruto, had informed the blonde that he was really a boy. "What? He's even more girly than Sasuke. He even talks like a girl." Since then, Naruto had been just sitting there, trying to go over everything they had said together, and was also questioning his sexuality. Land of Waves. Zabuza's hideout. Zabuza Momochi nodded in agreement as his tool finished outlining the plan he believed his master should follow. Using an enhanced version of the hiding in the mist technique would be costly in chakra, but the jutsu would still be beneficial enough. It appeared as though Kakashi had come to base his fighting style around his Sharingan, so robbing the man of his most fearsome weapon would unnerve him and limit his options. It would still require careful work by Zabuza, relying on just his hearing, except that was his preferred weapon. His observations during their first encounter would help him attack Kakashi psychologically as well. That was one of the few areas where he still surpassed Haku, due to his more worldly experience. Maybe I should consider finding another apprentice about his own age, Zabuza pondered. A partner or someone to interact with so he doesn't end up snapping. And Haku's been enjoying spending time with that Uzumaki kid too much. Quickly hardening his heart again, Zabuza amended to his chain of thoughts. My new student would have to be someone else willing to be my tool, of course. And only to help Haku become a better assassin, including helping him with social interactions so he can blend in with regular people better. Watching his protege walk away to prepare his own weapons, and the materials needed for the traps if the first plan failed, Zabuza conceded that there was another reason to find another companion, so if the master died, his tool would not be left alone in the world. Zabuza had ordered Haku to never take his own life if the former died, to keep living, but the boy had based his entire life around the older man. Father figure, mentor, leader, and sole purpose in existence, how would the kid cope without his owner in his life anymore? Haku might take up Zabuza's goals and ambitions, but it would be a hollow commitment at best, for the boy defined himself by others. And what kind of swordsman would Zabuza be if he let his best weapon lie discarded, rusting away, if he was no longer around to carry it? Land of Waves. Tazuna's house. Kakashi Hatake took one more look around the perimeter, before setting off with Sasuke and Sakura to guard Tazuna for the day. Naruto had worked himself to exhaustion again last night, so it was decided to let him sleep in and rest completely. The bridge is nearly done, so Gato and his thugs will have to make a move soon. We can't risk one of us being tired during a fight. Tonight I'll have to speak to Naruto about toning it down so he doesn't exhaust himself. Land of Waves. The bridge, under construction. Zabuza took one more look around the perimeter, before giving a nod towards Haku. The stage was set for the upcoming confrontation. Today he would bolster his stance in the ninja world with the death of one of the Leaf's living legends, and perhaps even take the man's Sharingan. He had no interest in such a cheap trick, using the man's eye, but if he lacked the foresight to turn it to his advantage somehow, he should just abandon his ambitions. Haku calmly approached from behind, the last of the construction workers resting on his right shoulder. All of them were actually alive, out of deference to Haku's argument that a reputation for killing civilian bystanders would only impede Zabuza and his ambitions. Slaughtering enemy ninja, preferably adults, was a more profitable image, and not just for a steady income. Instead, the civilians had only been thrashed and then put into death-like states, and left lying on the ground in staged positions to help unnerve Hataki's genin, which would make their teacher more vulnerable. Zabuza-sama, the woods have been covered? Yeah, Haku. If anyone tries to come from the shore by anywhere other than the path, we'll know about it. Heh. Are you still sure we put something in the water? Nah. I want to keep it confined to bridge anyways. If it does shift to the water, I still have the advantage there. And you'll remember too. Only long tolerance kept Zabuza from rolling his eyes. You'd think he was my mother instead of my weapon. Without turning around, he nodded yes. I'll maintain guerrilla tactics against him, and work to psych him out. Thank you, Zabuza-sama. A few minutes later. With a flash of kunai, Kakashi dispelled the ambush of Zabuza's water cones that had surrounded them. Only his incredible reflexes prevented the copies from cutting Kakashi's students and employer down with one massive coordinated swing of their oversized swords. Seriously, Zabuza must have heard every possible variation of "what are you overcompensating for?" crack there was. So, he said, letting his voice carry, you did survive, Zabuza? Sneering, Zabuza slowly walked out of the gathered mist. Fearless, he looked Kakashi dead in the eye, while the masked hunter from before showed his true allegiance by walking alongside the demon of the bloody mist. That one's mine, Sasuke calmly claimed, walking to the side so that he was directly in front of his nameless foe. That was quite a show you put on before, but we're on to you now, and I hate ham actors. Sasuke's so cool. Sakura squealed, while Kakashi's sweat dropped at how hypocritically dramatic Sasuke was being. Not to mention how Sakura would challenge everything Naruto said or did, yet took Sasuke completely at face value, without question. Accepting the invitation, Haku charged forward in a blur of speed, and was surprised when Sasuke seemed capable of matching him. Land of Waves. Path leading to the bridge. Naruto raced towards the bridge, desperate to help his teammates. Shortly after he had awoken, 2 thugs had attacked Tazuna's house. Fortunately, Naruto had seen a boar they had butchered for kicks on their way over, and had headed back. Which meant he had been there to witness the courage Inari had displayed in trying to stop those jerks. But if Gato is willing to make such a brazen move, then something must be going on at the bridge. Land of Waves. The bridge. Sasuke collapsed to the ground, incapable of moving with Saban needles piercing his body. When the masked boy had revealed his true power, Sasuke had been able to hold on for a little bit longer, awakening his true Uchiha heritage, the Sharingan. Unfortunately, his superior vision had only allowed his to dodge the projectiles by a hair's breadth, leaving him shredded from the near misses, dying by degree. Nothing Sasuke could do made a difference, and when Sakura had broken away from protecting Tazuna to try and help, the fake hunter had merely snatched her thrown kunai out of the air. She is seriously more harm than good. Inevitably, his opponent had scored a direct hit on Sasuke's pressure points, shutting down most of his body, while still leaving him conscious. Zabuza gloated as he faced off against Kakashi, daring the other man to leave himself exposed to try to help the Uchiha heir. Hehehe. Even if by some miracle you defeat me, you still won't have what it takes to kill Haku. Since he was a toddler, I've beaten his fighting skills into him. Even in the face of unthinkable adversity, he has always prevailed. He's lost all regard for his own life and become a killing machine, a true ninja. His skills surpass even my own. And he bears within a formidable legacy of an inherited bloodline limit. Thus I have forged and carry with me a weapon of matchless quality and skill, entirely unlike the scraps of trash that follow at your heels. Then, using the brief distraction while Kakashi processed the, ultimately useless, tidbits Zabuza had dropped, Zabuza prepared to activate his overpowered water release, hiding in the mist, wanting to start before Kakashi had a chance to activate his Sharingan. Suddenly, a shuriken came flying out of nowhere, to hit Haku in the mask, distracting him, while Naruto charged loudly in, Uzumaki Naruto. At your service. Here I am, to save the day. You know how the story goes. Things look bleak, till the hero arrives, and then POW. Bye-bye bad guys. And without further ado, jumped right between the gaps in the mirrors to join Sasuke in the death trap. Yo! Sasuke! I'm here to rescue you. The reactions to Naruto's performance, and letting himself subsequently be distracted furiously arguing with Sasuke over his rash and foolhardy actions, were telling. Sakura and Sasuke just yelled at Naruto for continuing to be an idiot, as was their usual response. Kakashi was a little less biased against Naruto, but he too was seeing a bit too much of the attention-seeking village prankster right now for anyone's good. Exasperating little dash. What we needed was an ambush. Instead, he all but paints a target on himself, and then leaps right into the line of fire. Now he's just someone else I have to save. But the moment I try to make a move, Zabuza will just counter it, and I'll be squandering my chakra meaninglessly, if not my life. For Zabuza and Haku, they were completely confused. On one hand, previously the kid had pulled off a brilliant example of ninja tactical deception before, and had shown mastery of some high-level jutsu. Now they were just seeing an idiot. Was it all an act to catch them off guard? Did he have some sort of brain ailment? Or was his need for attention, and his naivety regarding the lives of ninjas, truly that extreme? So focused was everyone on this, that Kakashi, Zabuza, and Haku nearly missed the rain of kunai and letter bombs that appeared out of nowhere. Land of Waves. Tizuna's house. Tsunami could hardly recognize her son. Her baby, her most precious person, was arming himself to raise an army of the people to march against Gato and his goons. Pride and fear swelled in her chest as she went to follow him, while she secretly prayed that Hataki-san already had whatever was happening at the bridge under control. Land of Waves. The bridge. Kakashi swore foully as he backpedaled, and threw out Earth Release, Earth Dome to raise a part of the bridge to shield himself, Sakura, and Tizuna from the sudden inferno of explosions. Zabuza used Water Release, Water Prison to encircle himself in a ball of super-dense water for protection, while Haku and his own opponents were secure within the Ice Release, Crystal Ice Mirrors. The ex-Mist Ninja's own composure faltered as everyone turned to see who was responsible for the new attack. Charging towards the bridge, only seconds away, were 8 masked men and women with the symbol of the village hidden in bloody mist on top of their foreheads. Umbu Hunters of the Mist, real ones this time. The fact that the Mist Ninja were acting in teams only underscored the threat they posed, since the majority of the Umbu Hunters acted alone. That meant that these men and women had been gathered together beforehand for a specific task, and were skilled at collaborating together. As the 8 hunters closed in, Zabuza quickly activated his enhanced version of Water Release, hiding in the mist, and with an iron will clamp down on his need to curse aloud, lest he reveal how concerned he really was. Gato must have paid attention when I mentioned Hitaki, and realized he could collect not just a share of my bounty, but him too. But why did they jump in like this instead of waiting until we were more wounded? Unless, no, those $% carat and S. They want Hitaki and the Uchiha Brat's Sharingan. They'd slaughter all those people back home for having a bloodline, except passing up on a Sharingan, and a kid who can create more, is too tempting. They must have been too worried Haku, and I'd kill them first. Plus, capturing Hitaki of all people alive to torture for information would be an incredible boon on its own. They'll want me alive too to learn. No. I'll die first. Kakashi and Zabuza immediately separated, silently agreeing to a temporary ceasefire while they dealt with this mutual threat. However, the enemy of my enemy was still their enemy. Haku had no such reservations though, happy to see a chance to spare the young genin before him. He quickly turned to Naruto. Our quarrel seems to be no more. Shall we be allies? If Kakashi had the concentration to spare to hear this offer, he would have yelled a definitive no to what would sound like a trap to him. However, the far more inexperienced Naruto jumped at the chance to accept. Maybe they could all work this out while he came out looking totally awesome. You got it. Let's get these rude jerks. With Zabuza. Knowing he had to get some distance from Hitaki, Zabuza quickly jumped down to get under the bridge, with 3 of the hunters following him. Trusting in his memory, and the effects of the mist he had created, Zabuza dodged and weaved through the support pillars. As expected, one of the traps that he and Haku had set went off, as one of the 2 hasty pursuers snagged a wire. Unfortunately, they were too experienced and used the substitution technique to survive. Possibly they even saw us setting them up, so weren't really that surprised. No matter, that momentary respite is all I need to go all out. About time they sent actual teams after me really, given all the solo acts I've killed. Heck, we even got Haku's mask from the 3rd attempt. Still running to grab more distance, Zabuza shifted his mouth to snag a military rations pill hidden under his face wrappings, yet held off eating it for a few seconds. He quickly cut his thumb on his sword, and soared through the hand signs to summon the allies of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, infesting the waters with sharks even as he swallowed down. Doubtless they have some plan to deal with them, but they should have underestimated how much my chakra has grown since I defected, and how many I can summon now. Plus, with this pill I've already replenished my chakra. Now they have a choice. They can let me go, and be free to continue my work, and maybe even tell the Leaf what happened here, for a price of course. Or they can engage me with low visibility, on a terrain where my little friends can pop up at any time to eat them. The hunters did not disappoint the wrath of the demon, charging forward to do battle with their foe. With Kakashi, Sakura, and Tazuna. Now that Zabuza and therefore the center of the artificial mist had moved away, Kakashi was actually benefiting from the fringes of that concealment. The remaining mist around him was just light enough for his Sharingan to see his own 3 opponents, except they were still suffering from impaired vision. Unfortunately, it was also becoming pretty clear that it was possible Kakashi had gotten in over his head. He had failed to consider any scenarios involving the intervention of any third parties to the conflict, and now Team 7 was outnumbered, and he was the only one with any chance of getting them out of this alive. Moreover, they have the advantage, since I have to still keep Sakura and Tazuna safe. I can't show my back to them, and judging by those explosions underneath, Zabuza's planted booby traps, which I also failed to consider, around here, ones which the Ambu hunters likely know about. So I have to keep this fight confined to here and too close to my students. Nothing but a rookie mistake. Stop. Focus what's in front of me. If they outnumber me, then I'll just have to go full-on offensive, and keep it up so they can't target the others. A quick glance with his Sharingan revealed that none of his opponents were clones, which was some relief. Creating a shadow clone, Kakashi sent it to get the Sakura and Tazuna out, while he charged head-on at his enemies, kunai drawn. His intent was not to kill, yet just keep them off balance by quick rapid strikes back and forth between them, distracting and wounding them, while the clone grabbed Sakura and Tazuna and hauled them to safety. Out of everyone, they were the weakest links. As he engaged the hunters though, it became clear it would be more difficult than expected. They had good reflexes, and had predictably been taught how to fight someone using silent killing, meaning they could still anticipate to an extent where he was going to strike even in this artificial mist. Fortunately, even 3-on-1 his Sharingan ensured he still got some strikes in. Screw this. One of them barked to his teammate. Adder! Do it! Senses tingling, Kakashi strove to anticipate what was coming, when all of a sudden he heard heavy objects being lobbed about, and he was hit by the blast of a massive explosion. Working to quietly retreat, Kakashi's clone had not gotten his charges far enough, and was instantly dispelled by the concussion. Neither Sakura nor Tazuna were prepared either, and were sent flying away further down the bridge, away from the shore and where Haku and Naruto were, and quickly passed into unconsciousness. With Haku and Naruto. The last 2 hunters targeted Haku and Naruto, splitting up to take them separately. The biggest one lead with a large 2-handed cleaver blade which he attacked Haku with brutally. To their shock, Haku rose to the challenge as he charged to meet them with a Senbon in either hand. Haku's specialty lay in stealth, assassination, and mid to long range fighting. However, he was the prodigious student of a man who desired the best weapon. A man who was himself adept at all ranges, and was an acknowledged master at melee fighting. Of course Haku could fight up close and dirty. Moreover, if these 2 were targeting him specifically as part of a pre-planned assassination, that mean they were expecting him to try and get some distance from them. That they had some strategy just for that. Thus, Haku would deny them the pleasure. Not to mention that in the time Haku took to get to safety, Naruto would already be gutted. Despite this surprise, the lead Anbu hunter went on the offensive, raining down blow after blow with his oversized sword, relying upon the strength of his arms and blade to break through his opponent's defenses. As if Zabuza-sama would accept such a weak tool, Haku coolly thought. My training has been not only to make myself strong, but also to provide him with a sparring partner to further his own development. As the student of a master swordsman, in a country that idealized them, Haku had long learned how to fight against swords and other long-bladed weapons. With a dancer's grace he weaved and ducked under each swing. Seeing an opening, he slapped the flat of the blade with his left-handed Senbon to deflect it, and then stabbed with the other. With his knowledge of the human body, a single stab he could kill or incapacitate as necessary. A perfect melding of his fighting style, and more merciful personality. However, his foe was an Anbu for a reason, and twisted so the Senbon merely dug into his flak jacket at a safe, for him, angle. Recovering, he brought his oversized cleaver down to split Haku's skull, only to grunt in further disbelief as Haku blocked the heavy weapon with only one arm and a single Senbon. It seems they continue to focus on Zabuza-sama, and failed to learn what they need about me. Good to know that plan is still going well. For his slim frame hid the power to crush a man's bones just by squeezing his hands. And those Senbon were actually icicles strengthened and hardened by his chakra. This was child's play. The only flaw with this fighting style was that he had to use only a single Senbon so that he could block, as opposed to the usual 4 he could hold to throw. Fingers blurring, he had a fresh Senbon in his right hand, yet the ANBU quickly recovered, and shifted to a style favoring rapid slashes, His blade was an ever-moving shaft of light in the thinning mist. In turn, Haku was as firm and unmoving as a glacier, holding his ground as he dodged or parried every strike that came at him away with minimal effort, while countering with rapid stabs that prevented Bloody Mist Ninja from moving his bulk too close. At first glance it seemed Haku was stuck on the defensive, except this was nothing compared to training against Zabuza-sama himself. Saban after Saban was starting to pierce the Umbu, and while none were significant so far, the toll was beginning to mount. Redirecting another attack with his left senboni, Haku attempted to stab the one of the man's arms with his right, realizing too late that it was a feint and his opponent was more experienced than expected. In a lightning-fast turnaround, the man burst forward again with chakra bursting out of his feet to slam his shoulder into Haku, while the teenager was still repositioning himself. Whatever cuts the man received in turn were minimal as the senbon failed to cut in deep enough at that angle, and the large blade slammed down brutally on his target's right shoulder. The feeling of victory was short-lived as Mist Ninja realized that his sword had only partially cut Haku, as if he was far more solid than to be expected. The real Haku, who had never been on the bridge in the first place, even while fighting Sasuke, activated the exploding tag under the back clothes his ice clone was wearing. Boom! Despite his fantastic reflexes and forewarning as he leapt back, the Umbu swordsman was still badly cut up as the explosion spewed icy shrapnel at him. Meanwhile, the eighth and final hunter had been hanging back, taking the measure of Haku's clone's skills, since Naruto had yet to make a move. Naruto had hesitated at first, noting how the shock from the earlier explosions had knocked the already disorientated Sasuke unconscious, leaving him curled up and looking like a pincushion. Unfortunately, after seeing how cool that masked ninja of Zabuza's was, the knucklehead decided to leap into the fray at the last Umbu. How else could he prove himself as future Hokage material? Even if I can't beat him, I can keep him busy enough for Kakashi-sensei to get here. Just like when I freed him from Zabuza. The cold, hard bridge slammed into Naruto's back as reality taught him otherwise. His vision was blurred as his head rang, and he could not see out of his right eye. Straining to get up, his right arm was on fire, and he felt wet over several places. He had never even saw it coming as he was brutally taken down. With an effort, he focused in front of himself, to see the dissipating clouds his clones made when they were killed. Suddenly in front of him was Zabuza's masked kid straining against the second attacking hunter, before jumping back to join the downed Naruto. He had saved his life. Haku, the real one, was uncharacteristically agitated as he reassessed the situation. Naruto's unpredictability and unexpected techniques had given him an edge when he had first clashed with Zabuza-sama. However, he had evidently failed to realize he had only lasted so long because Haku's master had been toying with the Leaf Genin when they had first met. The enemy Jonin had shredded the clone army without effort, and the only reason his kunai had only wounded Naruto was because he had had to dodge Haku's senbon at the very last moment. And the swordsman was now moving in. Naruto! Grab your friends into Zuna, and get out of here! Seizing the initiative, the man who had beaten down Naruto snapped his arms forward with their long, wide sleeves. In a puff of smoke, he had a scroll in his left hand that was unfurling on its own. With another flick and burst of smoke, in his right hand was a long string fitting through the pommel holes of a long brace of kunai. Despite himself, Naruto's only thought at Scrollumbu's move was cool. Then their enemy swung the rope, sending all of the knives flying at once to overwhelm them, while the Cleaverumbu to attack their flank. His own arms blurring, Haku threw over a dozen senbon of his own to knock the kunai away, and then spun and ducked to kick Naruto aside, taking them both out of the path of the sword. Using his own momentum, he kept moving to then stab Cleaverumbu in the anterior tibial artery, aiming just so to cause extensive blood loss and take the man's left leg out of action. The rest of the kunai flew harmlessly around him. Pushing backwards with his free hand, Haku leapt backward while keeping himself between Naruto and their foes. More senbon needles appeared between his fingers, drawn from subtle holes in clothes. Cleaverumbu could only curse, tearing off part of his sleeve to act as an emergency compress against the bleeding. In the meantime, Scrollumbu stood guard over him, less out of loyalty to a teammate, than acknowledging the more help the better, with another string of kunai already pulled from his sealing scroll. A temporary stalemate. Naruto was awestruck. That was the second time his mysterious enemy-turned-ally had saved him, and seemed to do it with such pure awesomeness that he seemed even better than Kakashi. As it was, he could only keep staring at these rapid-fire events, unable to even consider leaving the battle, wanting to stay to see more of this super-elite ninja. And then he remembered the promise he had made, how he had stabbed his own kunai into his hand, vowing to never run, never go back on his way. How he had maintained it even in the face of someone like Zabuza. How could he live with himself, if he ran away now? Adrenaline rushing away his aches, and trying to brush away the blood running into his eye, Naruto walked up to stand beside his newfound friend. Seriously, he could not wait to tell Iruka-sensei about this. Or Haku when they met up again for that matter. I told you to get out of here, snapped the masked figure who was actually Haku. The only reason he had not attacked yet while one of the hunters was vulnerable was because he was trying to buy time for his friend to get away to safety, as the bloody mist ninja were well aware. I'm not running away, Naruto growled back. I swore I would protect that old man and get this bridge built, and I'm not going back on my word. Besides, and with his Naruto made 10 new clones, if they kill you, I doubt we'll be able to get far enough away. He's right, you know, Scrollembu spoke up. No witnesses. Nothing personal. With Zabuza. Behind his head wrap, the demon of the bloody mist smirked with the satisfaction of a predatory. The hunters had indeed come with a plan to deal with the shark's depth charges. Fools! While one hunter threw the depth charges into the air, another of them kept sending a wide burst of wind jutsu, dispelling swaths of the mist with each blast. Unfortunately for them, it was clear that these guys had failed to actually practice as a team. The wind jutsu was a smart idea to remove Zabuza's terrain advantage, especially as he was an unparalleled master in this environment. However, if the gust was too big, it would disrupt the depth charges that were necessary to handle the shark summons. A team that had properly practiced this could fight the proper balance, yet these chumps were too busy trying to coordinate with each other when they were supposed to be fighting. Probably just thrown together hoping it would make enough of a difference. Typical of the idiots back home. Not to mention insulting, given how much they've underestimated me. Right now he was quickly stalking through the thick mist, dodging around their attempts to find him. For while he was the master of silent killing, these guys were no slouches either. Meaning he would have to actually break a drop of sweat in beating them. Catching a faint whistling noise in the air, he noted that one of the still airborne canisters was close by. With a quick leap he was alongside it, and had smacked the container filled with letter bombs back at his pursuers. Boom! Gah! Carrot and asterisk, hashtag. Ah good, looks like I singed them a little. Making a judgment call on his enemy's location, he decided to forfeit some of his shuriken by unleashing a barrage. After all, even a half-second deflecting his projectiles might cost the foe their life, and any wounds would only add up. Who knows? He might even get an eye or jugular. Sounds like they were deflected. Wait, where's the third one of them? Instinct made Zabuza turn at the last moment, bringing his executioner's blade up with the flat of it facing the attack from behind, deflecting the incoming kunai. Letter bombs attached. He snarled to himself, leaping back and hoping his blade would absorb the worst of the incoming explosion. I can always fix it later with the iron from their blood. With Kakashi. By the sound of those explosions, Zabuza's keeping busy, Kakashi thought, as he killed his first hunter. The moron had actually tried attacking the copy ninja head-on, after one of his teammates had partially thinned the mist with a wind jutsu. Even worse, Moranambu had done so while running through her hand signs right in front of Kakashi's Sharingan. Seeing the world in slow motion thanks to Obito's gift, he recognized the oncoming technique as a water release technique, and one that was most accurate when fired from the mouth as opposed to using pre-existing sources. Instantly developing a counter, Kakashi ducked beneath the ensuing torrent of water, flew through his own hand seals, and used lightning release, wave of inspiration. The flash of electricity passed right through the water, and fried the woman inside out. If she's not dead, she'll certainly keep until this is over. Desperately aware that his earlier failed gambit with his clone had halved his chakra, Kakashi of the Sharingan eye closed on the remaining two, a kunai in each hand, and his blood-red eye blazing. With Zabuza. He's gotta be a $#, and censor. Only way someone could have found me so fast. Zabuza cursed, realizing that his enemies were not the only ones guilty of underestimating their prey. He had been lucky, yet by throbbing of his left food, he had still sustained some burns. Sure enough, another barrage of kunai came in from that same umbu, forcing Zabuza to shift his position. Hearing triumphant calls, he knew the other two hunters were advancing. Although in their case, he could not only hear them, but also smell their singed uniforms. Charging forward heedlessly, confident that Sensorambu had scored a decisive hit to the traitor, the advancing mist ninja were startled to hear their comrade yell, "No! Stop, you fools!" Before this could register, they heard the sound of something breaking through the water all around them, and before they could scream, they were being pulled under. Choking on water, they could only thrash as the surviving sharks viciously tore them to shreds. Okay. That's a lot better, Zabuza's voice drifted over the mist with sadistic glee. They deserve that really, forgetting about that. Now how about you? With Haku and Naruto. These guys are pretty good, even if not good enough, Haku reflected. Their problem is that they're individually overspecialized, and got too greedy. If the full two squads had waited, then they could support each other enough to overwhelm even Zabuza-sama. Instead, they jumped the gun trying to get the Sharingan as well, and split themselves up, ruining their main advantage. They were probably watching my clone fight the Uchiha, and assuming it was the real thing, and thought I was weak enough that they could easily kill Naruto and I, then join the others fighting Hitaki, and then finally swarm Zabuza-sama. Hubris. They know nothing of my true power, and now dare not retreat and show me their backs. I will protect Zabuza-sama and his dream, no matter the cost. All of this passed through his mind in a split second, his face as impassive as the mask upon it. The man with the sealing scrolls was definitely the more dangerous of the two, especially after the man with the sword has his mobility crippled. Naruto was now keeping the latter busy with a seemingly endless barrage of shadow clones. Now that Cleaverumbu was sufficiently injured, the Leaf Genin was able to serve as a satisfactory distraction. Meanwhile, Haku squared off against his own opponent, who was unsealing and throwing a seemingly endless number of weapons. Unfortunately, Haku was running low on Saban needles to attack and or intercept with, forcing him to use ice release, crafting elegant tools to create more. Struck with inspiration from that observation, Haku quickly barked out the orders, "Naruto clones. Don't use your fists, just throw your weapons." After all, every one of them should be exact copies of the original set. Obediently, the orange horde threw all of their kunai and shuriken without restraint to overwhelm their enemy. Why didn't I think of that before? No, why didn't he? It's an obvious move with clones, yet Naruto never did it. Is he that inexperienced with his own technique? I just assumed he would, and failed to prompt him. Noting how his comrade was unable to use a proper substitution with such a foot injury, Scrollumbu jumped in front, and unsealed a large metal shield to block the barrage. Gotcha, Haku calmly thought, activating ice release, crystal ice mirrors now that they were both so close together. Now even if Scrollumbu escaped, he should be so distracted by the technique that Haku could easily dispatch Cleaverumbu without leaving Naruto vulnerable, while he was distracted. A blast of water shook him out of his triumphant thoughts, as the obscured sword wielder burst out and unleashed a massive water release, water bullet technique that sent Haku flying. Dazed, he only barely rolled to the side from the kunai that flashed at him, but could not stop the gasp of pain that was ripped from his throat as they still found flesh. Off to the side, Naruto could only look on in horror at what had happened to his new teammate, unable to focus on the hunters, who were lining up more kunai to finish them both off. His mask. It's Haku. What's he dash? He's been trying to help me this whole time. Let's finish this, Cleaverumbu grunted. Then we can grab the Uchiha kid while the others finish off the rest. And that was the last straw. While still confused about Haku, Naruto had considered him a friend since they had first met in the forest all those days ago. And now, Haku had literally jumped in front of Naruto to save him. Like Iruka had against Mizuki. Like he was a real friend. More of a friend than Sasuke ever acted, despite how Naruto knew they were so much alike in their dark loneliness. With those last threatening words, however, and Haku struggling to get up while spitting out blood, Naruto finally had some idea of what the life of a ninja was like. It was a dark and violent world, full of pain and loss, where kids would be killed because it was convenient, and people would show no mercy to Naruto's precious people. And that was unacceptable. If that was what life as a ninja was like, then Naruto vowed he would change it. It was a child's dream, really, an unrealistic promise to try and change the world. But sometimes, great change needs to start small. And sometimes, these idealists actually do have the power to change the world. Especially if they are motivated. Especially if they see those precious to them, about to be gutted. For the first time in his life, Naruto permitted himself to fully let loose, to unshackle the rage he had never dared show the world since he was very young. Lest everyone truly rejected him. For the first time in his life he could vent all the fury he was capable of feeling without fear of the consequences, and revel in it. For these masked freaks were enemy ninja, threatening the mission. They were the bad guys. They were evil, and had to die. It was as simple as that. And with that exhilaration came power. The world seemed to be moving slowly under an orange haze. He felt light as a feather, and bursting with energy that just wanted out. Feeling strong enough now to rend solid steel. What tore out from his mouth was between a roar and a scream, as years of pent-up emotions were finally given voice. Haku and Naruto's prey could only stare in disbelief, as someone they had written off as a threat grew fangs and claws, and stood surrounded by swirling orange chakra which took the form of the head of a snarling beast over the little genin's head. Haku's brain struggled to keep up, his training unable to help him cope for this shock. Impossible! His chakra is physically manifesting itself. An appalling chakra it is. A more detailed examination of Naruto's body merely added to his confusion. His arm and forehead, the wounds are healing themselves. What on earth is he? And in answer, he heard a voice give a strangled whisper, Jinchuriki. That shape it's taking, moaned Cleaverumbu. It's the Nine Tails. Overlooked in face of this new threat, Haku could only gape at the two immobile Bloody Mist ninja, clutching their kunai, before turning back to stare at Naruto, who was now facing them all, with red eyes and slit pupils. Zabuza and the surviving Bloody Mist ninja shivered with dread, trying to understand what this new development was. Horror and desperation gave new strength to Kakashi. I've to end this now. I've got to know what's happening with Naruto's seal, or this whole island'll be destroyed. Unbeknownst to these warriors, Gato and Inari's respective armies continued to advance, their untrained senses leaving them blind to the bloodbath they were approaching. With Zabuza. I've got to change tactics, Zabuza thought as he continued to play cat and mouse with Sensurumbu. Keeping my mist up means he'll just stick to throwing toys at me, because just sensing me doesn't mean he can guarantee a good enough shot without his eyesight. Prolonging the fight is also draining my chakra. He can avoid my sharks, and he avoids me every time I try to get close enough to cut him. Wait, the sounds are shifting. Quickly cutting off his chakra, the mist thinned enough for Zabuza to see his enemy was creating water clones to fight him. Oh, so he thinks he's so clever. It's adorable, really. I rely upon sound, so he's making more noise, all identical, to confuse me. But this is nothing I haven't handled before, but his bloody sensory abilities complicates things. Alrighty then, no big deal. Although I do have to hurry this up and find Haku. And then we can figure out what this foul new chakra is. I'm not even a sensor, and I can feel it. Zabuza flashed his hands through similar hand signs, and created an equal number of clones, and charged forward with them, while roaring at his shark summons to follow suit. Their summoning time was getting close to expiring, another reason why it was necessary to end this quickly, yet the demon of the Bloody Mist was counting on them lasting long enough to turn the tide in his favor. If the Hunter Umbu was surprised by the sudden berserk charge, he gave no sign of it, and had his clones swarm at the original Zabuza. His own plan was simple. Unlike the traitor, he could readily differentiate the original from the clones since the clones had such smaller chakra reserves. Hiding amongst his own clones, the masked man would sneak in some more letter bombs into the fray, and retreat. Zabuza was not an idiot. Luring in those enemy clones, he simply substituted with one of his own clones, and was now flanking the original Sensurumbu, who was visibly hanging back. Water release, water shark bullet. Before his jutsu, water solidified to form a shark, barreling down on its target, while Zabuza's clones threw shuriken as a distraction. Like fish in a barrel, Zabuza smirked. This guy was all set to whittle me down with counters to my signature fighting style. Except they overlooked how I can easily fight head-on too. Switching places with one of his clones who had gotten far enough away, the hunter dodged the water jutsu, only to be immediately pressed as Zabuza charged forward to cut through half of his remaining clones with a single swing of his massive sword. Zabuza's water clones pressed the initiative, attacking their remaining enemies to prevent any more substitutions, even as sharks attacked from below. Realizing how completely he had underestimated his enemy, Sensurumbu played his last card, unfurling a scroll to deploy his own supply of depth charges. Activating them all, and waiting a few seconds to run the fuse down more, he threw most of them into the air, and then charged the original with the last one clutched in his hand. Seeing the threat, and the smoking fuse on the explosive, Zabuza merely smirked, and cut off the chakra to his feet. Dropping below the water, and grabbing onto a nearby shark, he knew that down here he could merely dodge his enemy even if he chased after him. And with the other, falling, explosives, the fool had merely turned the surface into a death trap. Coming to the same conclusion, the increasingly desperate hunter abandoned his kamikaze attack and threw away his depth charge, and tried to run. He nearly succeeded, but the blast from the last of the raining explosives shook him up. Slowly, like the demon he was, Zabuza emerged from the waves, emitting all of his killing intent. So this is what the fourth Mizukage claims to be a stronger breed of ninja. He snarled. You were outclassed from the beginning, and should never have been sent against me. With a single flash of the body flicker technique, he was beside his prey, and beheaded him. Now for the others. With Kakashi. Water release, hiding in the mist technique. Kakashi cried, startling his targets with his use of their village's own signature technique to replace this mist that Zabuza was no longer putting out. I was saving this to fight Zabuza, and I'd like to mark them first, but Naruto is the priority right now. I have to end this fast. Knowing his enemies were also shifting their positions, Kakashi moved towards the hunter ninja he had electrocuted before. Devoid of mercy, he slit her throat to make sure she was dead, and yanked out a scroll from his flak jacket with his other hand. Rubbing some of the gushing blood onto the scroll, Kakashi quickly went through more hand seals and slammed the scroll down on the bridge. Summoning, Earth Release, Tracking Fang Technique. Screams rent the air, and Kakashi dispelled the mist, revealing each of the two hunters with dogs, immobilizing them with fangs buried into their limbs. Without missing a beat, Kakashi grabbed 4 of his remaining kunai, and threw them at his unmoving targets, spearing their throats. A quick sniff from the dogs confirmed they missed A and B were dead, and no one else was hiding nearby. Satisfied, Kakashi looked towards where he could feel the corrosive chakra emanating from Naruto. With Naruto and Haku. The hunter with the lame foot grabbed his sword, and took up a stance. He knew he could not run, and probably could not kill the demon spawn anyways, so he would serve as a distraction while his partner grabbed his most powerful sealing scroll. He was not disappointed in either regard. With a roar, Naruto charged with a speed that would do a Jonin proud. Slamming right into Cleaverambu, the man struck with textbook perfection, yet was still wrenched from his hands as if he had struck a cliff wall, and he himself was knocked onto his back. Uninjured, Naruto straddled the gasping man and tore his arm off. The second hunter knew he was a dead man as he watched the teenager chuckle at the howls of his prey, but he swore he would die as befitted a ninja of the village hidden in mists. Grabbing 2 more of his special scrolls, he unfurled them and activated specific seals, releasing a sealed version of water release, hiding in the mist, and leapt into his temporary cover. While this version of the technique would only last 55 seconds, it required no further chakra, leaving him the rest of his reserves for his trump card. The sound of further tearing flesh, and a final gasp, told him the fate of his partner. And slowly, oh so slowly, he heard the sounds of someone coming near him. Weird sounds too, like they were walking hunched over on their hands and feet. Kakashi could have been there first, but he made a detour to grab Sakura and Tazuna and get them off the bridge. If the situation went belly up any further, the bridge would likely be the first casualty, and they would fall and drown. Moreover, the return of thick mist from Naruto's location was a clue that Naruto was still knee-deep in a fight. Charging in carelessly was suicidal in normal circumstances, and right now Naruto could even attack him without recognizing him. Hence, Zabuza beat the copy ninja to the scene, trying to puzzle out what exactly was happening. Suddenly a burst of something broke over him, forcing him to shift his balance, while the mist came barreling at him. Was that chakra? Such a pure blast of energy that it was physical force in itself. With the mist blown away, he took in the sight before him. Haku, unmasked and injured. Probably not critically, as his tool was tough and a good medic in his own right. The Uchiha kid, lying on the ground, looking like he had been tossed about a bit while stuck full of needles. One dead hunter Ambu, missing an arm and most of his throat, upper chest, and jaw. One seriously freaked out surviving hunter, kneeling beside an open sealing scroll, holding his hands in the tiger seal. And one Jinchuriki. $$ and. Okay, seriously, what is with this kid? What are the odds that this mission would go like this? Zabuza paused, hefting his sword while his brow furrowed in thought. No, wait, what are the odds actually? A Jinchuriki is a hidden village's ultimate trump card. If he's not being kept safe back home, why are his training and skills so out of whack? Kid's got talent, but compared to Yagura, or the Jinchuriki of the hidden cloud, well, there's no comparison. He took another glance at Haku, who strangely did not seem afraid of the blonde. Indeed, he seemed more concerned for him, to the point he had missed Zabuza's approach. Also, judging by this tool's injuries, his wounds had come from the mist ninja, not the leaf genin. Carefully he shifted his heel against the ground to get Haku's attention. Unfortunately, it was not subtle enough, as both kids heard it, with the Jinchuriki pausing his prowling advance on his hands and feet. Reading Zabuza's questioning look, Haku gave a reassuring nod. Hey kid, Naruto right? You hear me? Zabuza called out, keeping his hands to the side. Did you make some sort of deal with Haku? Because I gotta say, I'm calling off the whole trying to kill Tazuna thing. Gato must have betrayed me if these guys showed up. Actually, Zabuza was not perfectly sure about that, but he was too worn out to risk fighting a Jinchuriki, especially when the brief glances of the corpses he had seen on the bridge showed Kakashi was still alive, if absent. In fact, I'll even throw in Gato's head as both an apology, and thank you for helping my follower. Sound good? You attacked me. All of us, was the snarled response, so thick with rage that the boy was having a hard time speaking straight. That's water under the bridge, kid. No pun intended. That's how the ninja world works, except now the situation has changed. No, Naruto snapped, while Zabuza fought the urge to put his sword between the two of them. It shouldn't be. Ninja should be different. But don't want to fight. You. First, this man has to die. After that, I'll. Steel slammed into Naruto's head, as Scrollembu finally gathered the necessary amount of chakra for sealing technique, infinite constraints. Countless numbers of spiked chains slammed out of the scroll into Naruto and everyone else present, entangling and tearing into them. The force with which the bindings were expelled made them ensnarl the hunter ninja's enemies. Naruto fought to get out, protected by his chakra shroud, yet unable to move as his own efforts to escape kept pulling them tighter. Even bursts of chakra from his body only seemed to make the situation worse. Zabuza roared with rage, at both his pain and at how he had idiotically focused solely on the primary threat, and like a novice overlooked the others. Haku threw up a shield of ice to protect himself, while Sasuke was unharmed since the hunter was so surprised by his good fortune he decided it was possible he could still complete his mission. More and more chains were created, burying the Jinchuriki and the traitors. Well, this is unexpected. Shaking with exhaustion, the hunter Umbu turned around to see their contact, the businessman Gato standing in front of him, with a veritable army of cheat thugs covering up the background. Underneath the bridge, Haku popped out of an ice mirror he had created, panting for breath as he struggled to keep himself from sinking under the surface of the water. Creating a mirror out of his line of sight was taxing, even with the mass of an ocean literally under his feet, and he had expended even more chakra creating a shield strong enough to protect him, along with all the other fighting today. A moment later, Zabuza dropped down too, covered in wounds, and holding his sword in a way that told Haku the infamous blade had been used to block the bulk of the attack. The man was fortunate he had retained the room to drop through the bridge using an earth jutsu, slipping through the concrete. See, Zabuza-sama, we have to go back. Haku? Have to help Naruto. Zabuza looked Haku in the eye, and cocked his head. You're not asking as my tool, but your own person, aren't you? Haku blanched at that, but Zabuza merely shrugged. I can hear Gato's voice up there, so I have to go back anyways. If he's here, he really did betray us. And if your little Jinchuriki is still alive, then there are other advantages. And with that, he took off. An enraged Kakashi Hatake shoving his hand right through the last hunter's chest was the first thing to meet Zabuza's eye reappeared on top of the bridge. The jutsu so powerful that Zabuza could actually see the chakra in the copy ninja's hand. So, Gato, Zabuza called out casually. What's all this? Gato flinched for a moment, and then took in all the blood on both Zabuza and Kakashi, and regained his courage as he mistakenly thought it was mostly their own. Hehehe. There's been a slight change of plan, Zabuza. Or of your plans, anyway. This was what I had in mind all along. You're going to die, demon, here and now. You must have guessed. I never intended to pay you. The petty tyrant opened his mouth to say more, except a kunai lodged itself in his throat and severed his spine. Glancing over at a simmering Kakashi, Zabuza cocked his head in a questioning manner. My contract against Tazuna is no longer relevant, and your kid was fighting to help my apprentice. So, I have no more interest in fighting you. Kill this trash, and then see what we can do for Blondie Boy. The ensuing fight was quick and brutal, with majority of the low-class mercenaries dying from letter bombs, while the fleeing stragglers were cut down with kunai and Zabuza's executioner's blade. Frankly, they were not enough to justify any more time and effort. Kakashi glared at the pile of chains, knowing his chakra was severely exhausted, especially given how he had foolishly used a lightning blade in his fury at the Bloody Mist ninja. If he was able to come up from behind like that, a simple kunai would have been sufficient. Suddenly, another feral roar emanated from it, followed by a muted crashing nose. Quickly ducking under the bridge, Kakashi immediately jumped towards the ripple in the water signifying something had fallen in, and yanked an exhausted Naruto out. Thank goodness, the fox's chakra has receded. Looking up, he could see the jagged hole through the bridge, with the tangling ends of torn chains hanging through, and it kept him safe from those spikes too, long enough for it to punch its way down and out. To his shock, when Kakashi returned to the top of the bridge, Zabuza had collapsed. In the span of less than a minute, he had gone pale, clammy, his eyes bloodshot, and it looked like he had collapsed to the ground when his shaking limbs gave away. A boy-girl, dressed in the same outfit as the demon's apprentice, albeit without his mask, turned to Kakashi with a desperate expression. The chains were poisoned. The boy probably cried out desperately. Do you have anything? Pausing, Kakashi shook his head in genuine regret. Someone with Zabuza's skill deserved better. For any other village, the ANBU hunter would have the antidote in case he or his allies were accidentally poisoned, but not the bloody mist. Moreover, as an ex-ANBU himself, they would know exactly what inoculations Zabuza had been given, and prepared accordingly. Besides, being on the run would have deprived him of medical infrastructure necessary for safely administrating the latest counteragents to handle the newest versions of whatever poisons all the villages were constantly developing. Not that Kakashi was complaining too much, since it looked like there was going to be one less threat. Sorry. I don't have anything. And it doesn't look like Zabuza will last long enough for me to get something in time. Coughing, Zabuza raised his head. In that case, I guess I'll have to play one of my last cards, Hataki. If you seal me up, and take me back to the leaf for recovery, I'll provide you guys with intel. Kakashi sighed in even greater disappointment. Sorry, but I don't have the chakra left to do it. He then indicated a hole in his weapons pouch, and my soldier pills were lost from some explosions. Yet he noted how exhausted and injured the younger missing Nin was, how coming back onto the bridge must have drained him of his remaining strength, and how relatively well off Naruto was. I'll go see if any of the other hunters had anything useful on them. And with that, he was off, leaving Naruto alone with them, trusting that Naruto was healthy enough to defend himself if necessary. Glaring, the dying man directed his attention to Naruto. What about you, kid? You look strong enough still to do it. Whoa. I don't know how to seal people. You're a Uzumaki. Of course you know by this point. Uzumaki? What do you mean? Naruto stammered as he dealt with yet another surprise on this emotional day. Slowly, Zabuza's attitude turned from demanding to disbelieving. Kid, are you honestly telling me you've never heard of the Uzumaki clan? Of Uzushi Ogakure? Famous allies of the leaf? Sealing in their blood? What the heck happened to you growing up? Noting the growing confusion with each question, Zabuza slowly nodded his head. Alright kid, piece of advice, start asking more questions. Look underneath more. Even as he said this, a glint of naked calculation danced so intently in his eyes that even Naruto could see it. Slowly, Naruto nodded in turn, trying to process what his former enemy was trying to tell him. Tears began to fall from his eyes as pent-up emotions from the day leaked through. And from how even he could tell that Zabuza was dying, a man he come to respect, especially since he was precious to Haku, and had apparently come to help him against the last hunter. Who was, even now at the very end, seemed to be trying to help Naruto. Truthfully, it was that Zabuza was just too insulted at such wasted potential, and figured it would make Hataki's life miserable. More importantly, Naruto appeared to be literally the only one alive who genuinely cared for Haku. Except he would have to coach it in the only terms that he believed that the latter understood. But since I'm about to die, there is only one thing left for me. Haku. Yes, Zabuza-sama, Haku said quietly, fighting the exhaustion and pain from the battle and climbing back up to the bridge. I have one final mission for you as my tool. Then the dying Zabuza turned his head towards Naruto. Kid, I need you to do a man a favor. Kakashi continued to rifle through corpses, ignorant of what was happening back with Naruto. Look after Haku for me, Zabuza bluntly asked, and before either Haku or Naruto could react, he turned to the former. Follow the kid, stay by him and be his weapon. And you should know, my greatest pride was being there to take care of you and train you, my tool, my weapon, my son. And then, tired of all the drama he had endured this day, Zabuza lowered his head, closed his eyes, and let the Grim Reaper come for him. Land of Fire. Kanehigakure. Hokage Tower. Later. The third Hokage stared at the scroll that Kakashi's dog summon, Pakken, had brought him, feeling more than a little shocked as he tried to decide what to do with the information he had received. The issue of Tazuna falsifying his mission request was easily solved, with Kakashi's assessment of Land of Waves reactions leading him to conclude that the land would prosper and request many future missions. In fact, the solidarity shown from the people's late-arriving militia led by the old man's grandson was taken as proof that the nation was well on its way to rebuilding itself stronger than ever. The bridge builder had also agreed, without even needing any encouragement, to claim that he had paid in full, up front, for the proper mission request, so as to not encourage any future clients to do the same. In the aftermath, Kakashi had given careful counseling to his students, working to help them deal with the events. Or what he claimed was appropriate therapy at least. With that man it could be hard to tell. The attack from the hunters, and the massacred corpses that had lain around the bridge, had helped drive home to the kid the true, gritty world of being a ninja. Even a ninja of Konoha. According to the report, Sakura was apparently shaken, yet Kakashi wanted to wait a little longer to see how well the message sunk in. Sasuke had seen worse as a child, so he was not as affected, but Kakashi was concerned about how much the Uchiha's pride had been injured from losing. As for Naruto, while initially feeling vindicated over the deaths of so many bad guys, the boy had eventually broken down. It had taken Kakashi some work to help Naruto, except it was mainly thanks to their new companion. On a related note, Naruto was also surprisingly desolate over Zabuza's death. That Zabuza's body had been burned, and the ashes then buried, instead of brought back for examination by the medical experts for any of the missed secrets, was a little surprising. However, Kakashi had decided to respect Naruto's wishes on the matter, lest the boy become angry again. It had not been until afterwards that Kakashi had had the opportunity to covertly look at Naruto's seal. While nowhere close to his dead sensei's level, Kakashi still possessed enough skill to tell when even a high-level seal was breaking down, and had fortunately been able to confirm that there was no sign the seal was weakening. However, that did not explain how some of the fox's chakra had still slipped through. That little tidbit alone made the Hokage decide to classify the entire mission as top secret. A fake mission report would be written by Kakashi, with only the Hokage knowing the full details. The genin of Team 7 would be unable to say otherwise, having been unconscious or confused, i.e. influenced or partially possessed. It was still unclear when the Kyuubi had slipped through a little. No, the real quandary lay with the mysterious Haku, who had sworn himself to be Naruto's servant. Kakashi and his dogs believed that he was being honest, which was a strong character reference given the experience they had. But letting a foreign shinobi spend time with the village's Jinchuriki? One who was an extremely emotionally vulnerable teenager. Hiruzen Sarutobi, as the supreme military dictator by the appointment of the daimyo, had the authority to concede to this, but should he? Then a thought struck him like a thunderbolt. Kakashi's report also says that he knows about the Kyuubi, and doesn't care. This is a boy who is accepting Naruto for who he is. Someone who will be there for him. The Hokage bitterly remembered the oath he had sworn to Naruto on the day he was born, except nothing he did seemed to stick. The cesspool of contention that had arisen was staggering, and Naruto's fate had become the focus of much of the backroom politics over the years. The Professor be the ruler of village hidden in leaves, but Naruto was unknowingly the center of a quiet war that had plagued the village for years as all too many people resisted his orders. The third Hokage still remembered that dreadful day vividly, as he rushed through the collapsing barrier as Kushina passed on. Crumpled to the ground beside his wife, most of his organs torn out by the fox's fang and his soul about to be consumed by the god of death, Minato had still coughed out between his blood for the Hiruzen to promise that his son would be treated as a hero, and not be seen as the prison for the monster, nor blamed for its crimes. Except, as he may be ready. Naruto almost died on an A-ranked mission at age 12. He fought against one of the 7 swordsmen, and 8 hunters of the Bloody Mist, all of whom are famous for their bloodlust, without ever knowing the whole truth. Who he is. Who his parents were. No more. He deserves to know. Haku may be too dangerous to have around him, but I will see how Naruto has developed, and then make my decision of whether or not he is ready for the full truth of his heritage. Land of Waves. The bridge nearly finished. Haku knew he only had a minute at most away from Kakashi's watchful eye, so he quickly stepped under the bridge and focused his sight on the other side of the distant shore of the mainland, at a distinctive outcropping of rocks visible even from the Land of Waves. Forming a mirror beside him, and at the designated meeting place, Haku quickly traveled through his mirrors to appear across the ocean, and addressed the kneeling ninja before him. Zabuza Momochi-sama is dead. His blunt words sent a ripple through his former master's followers. But he gave me a final order in his death. He has assigned me to a young boy from Konoha, with great potential. If the boy is willing, he will be of significant help to us. Enough to be decisive in our war. Regardless, I am now sworn into his service. The representatives of the now former members of Zabuza's small revolutionary army just stared at Haku in disbelief. Yet they knew any outcry would come with repercussions, for they had no delusions where they stood in the pecking order when compared to the likes of Haku. The wrong word about his new decision or new master would be painful. Finally one asked, and if he is not willing to help us cast down the 4th Mizukage? We have already gathered ample supplies and equipment to last you a while. Go to Base 3, and wait for me there for 6 months. Train hard. I will send further word then. If you do not hear from me, I ask that you go try and join Mei Tamuri's rebel group, but I will likely be dead. With that, the ice user stepped back into his mirror and vanished back through his mirror. My apologies, Zabuza-sama, but I will be still working towards accomplishing your ambition. Helping Naruto, Sama will be my priority, but I will use my time in the Leaf to see if I can aid our homeland. I know you thought I only helped you fight against the Mizukage for your own ambitions, but in truth, it was in no small way my goal as well. To end the purges, and prevent any more children having to kill their own families in self-defense. Omake. Zabuza Momochi-sama is dead, Haku announced, his blunt words sending a ripple through his former master's followers. But he gave me a final order in his death. He has assigned me to a young boy from Konoha, with great potential. If the boy is willing, he will be of significant help to us. Regardless, I am now sworn into his service. The representatives of the now former members of Zabuza's small revolutionary army just stared at Haku in disbelief. Yet they knew any outcry would come with repercussions, for they had no delusions where they stood in the pecking order when compared to the likes of Haku. That had been drilled into them from the very start. Flashback. Not wanting to be bothered by the initial training of these new recruits, Zabuza was off to the side, enjoying his morning routine as he busily fixed up his sword by running the corpses of fish against it so that the blade could absorb their blood. Haku was addressing the kneeling men and women on the ship's deck before him, his face calm yet serious. Alright maggots, listen up. Haku's about to teach you the pecking order. It goes you, the dirt, the worms inside the dirt, Haku's stool, Zabuza, and Haku. Any questions? One nameless ninja held up his hand, The next thing the man knew, he was being thrown off the moving ship to land in the water. Shaking with fear, the remaining recruits watched as Haku called back to the unfortunate man, enjoyed the swim back to ship, suddenly flashing a sickening smile. Bitch! Back to his straight face in the blink of an eye. Any more question? Silence was the answer he received, and he brought back that same deranged grin. Good. Then we can begin. Flashback end. Yes, the assembled rebels had no wish to challenge the pecking order. Jutsu. I will only be doing information for non-canon jutsu here. Everything else can be found on Nerdopedia, and with lots of details. Especially with regular updates to the website. Ice Release, Ice Clone Technique. An improved version of the water clone technique, so that while the clone still only has a fraction of the user's power, it is both more durable, and able to go a far greater distance from the original. Ice Release, Crafting Elegant Tools. The user is able to forge weapons crafted from water turned to ice, with the most experienced practitioners requiring only the moisture in the air. The more skillful the wielder, and the more chakra they use, the stronger the resultant weapon is. Icicles are the foundation of this, and any more advanced weapons have to share some resemblance to them to work. For instance, the user can create large spikes, spears, samban, or sais with straight prongs, but not swords. Sealing Technique, Infinite Constraints. An A-rank sealing technique, in which the user unseals chains which have sealing matrices on them in turn, which release even more chains, and so on. The force with which they are unsealed propels them forward with enough force to hurt and or entangle enemies. If the user intends more than capture, they can be spiked. Was originally created by the Uzumaki as an alternative to their chakra chains constructs for those who could not use them, but in the years after the fall of Yuzushiogakure, others managed to replicate it. Land of Fire. Kanehigakure. Training Field 27. 2 weeks since Zabuza's death. Shadow Clone Technique. A wave of blonde and orange swarmed at Haku, whose hand merely made a few gestures. A mirror of ice formed before him, and kanonied forward like a battering ram with the assassin right behind. Plowing through the horde, his samban dispersed 20 of the clones before they even knew what hit them. Dropping his improvised shield, the too pretty boy engaged in taijutsu against the remaining clones. Against the first he merely blocked or deflected to gauge them, before snaking stiffened fingers through to crush the throat. The second clone he kicked at with reduced speed, but the clone was just a hair's breadth too slow to avoid Haku's geta from digging into its stomach. Seeming a bit smarter, the third clone was throwing every kunai and shuriken it had, while the fourth tried to blindside Haku from his right with kunai in each hand. Without even looking, the older teen grabbed the ambushing clone and hefted him into the air in front of the weapons, blocking them before dispelling into smoke, the weapons falling free. The remaining clone could only stare in surprise before his own kunai, snatched out of the air, were thrown right between his eyes. Taking a second to assess that yes, all of them were down, Haku turned to his spectator, his breathing still even. So? What did you think? The perfect duplicate of the clones, or rather they were of him, gave a heavy sigh. Naruto Uzumaki. The ex-missing Nin's friend, student, and new, and unwilling, master. He refused to be referred to as Naruto-sama, yet the Leaf Genin's new tool was adaptable, which included not referring to himself as such aloud. They still don't stand a chance against you, Naruto pouted, staring at the ground in frustration. He jumped a little as a hand rested on his shoulder. Don't be like that, Haku said, having seemingly teleported over to him. I was testing them, and their hits were harder, reflexes faster, better grouping and accuracy with your weapons, and your teamwork is becoming stronger too. Or more original would be more on target. They were learning to use tactics more sophisticated than just charging in. You're already making incredible progress in a short period of time. Instantly Naruto was beaming. Just you wait. I'll be taking you down, and then the Hokage. Believe it. Glad to see the blonde's self-confidence bolstered, Haku gave a small smile that many, uninformed, adolescent boys would have killed to have sent their way. I know you will. Except never forget why it is you were able to do so well against Zabuza-sama. Because I was so surprising, Naruto promptly answered, as he had done several times before. I kept having ideas or abilities he did not expect. Same with those Hunter Nin, except with them it was the QB. Charging in head-on nearly got me killed twice, and likely my teammates too. So I have to learn how to keep being unpredictable, while also hiding my true potential until it is too late for the bad guys. Or do stuff like you did, laying down bombs, having clones set up like that. He looked especially interested in the potential of clones and high explosives. Grinning even more at that enthusiasm, Haku added on to that, having wanted to wait until he felt a little better before taking the lesson any further. Also, remember that while your sensei may have been stronger in an open confrontation, Zabuza-sama managed to even the odds, especially by initially avoiding such a direct fight. He had restrained Hataki's actions and played with his mind to put him at a disadvantage. Once he lost that initiative, he lost. Then he paused to wait, making a subtle gesture at Naruto's stomach, and the seal there. Oh! Gasped Naruto. And he knew to do that because everyone knew about Kakashi's Sharingan. So I should keep the QB secret. Then he lost some of his confidence. Except I don't know how to make him help. He's only come out that one time, and I don't really know why. Then he beamed again as he shoved such thoughts aside. I'll figure it out. Because I'm awesome. Yes you are, Haku strongly agreed. That said, don't forget that I, Zabuza-sama, and Hataki, have all had years to get so good. Not just experience, but proper training as well. Now he removed his hand from Naruto's shoulder. While you still need to make more progress, you're doing excellent so far, and you will definitely make it. Now, on that note, give me 100 push-ups. Without even a groan, Naruto got on the ground to begin. For his incredible stamina, this was nothing. Besides, still the need to develop his muscles, since this was one of the things his clones could not do for him. He had just never had the patience to do it this much before. And he kept losing count. Haku did that for him now. While mentally keeping track of how many Naruto was doing, and giving a quick praise for having a perfect form now, for his exercises, Haku multitasked. What are characteristics of Yin chakra? He quizzed. It took Naruto a precious few seconds to remember his lesson from last night. Oh. Right. It's based on spiritual energy stuff, and is usually used for genjutsu. But some clans use it for other stuff too. Correct. Now, what element is wind ninjutsu naturally superior against? Lightning. Name the countries that neighbor the land of fire. It continued like this for the rest of the push-ups, and then to the sit-ups, including the bare basics of ninja politics and law into the second sets, before it was clear the young teen was straining too much to do hated studying and exercise at once. Of course, that very effort only highlighted how he had been neglected for so long, particularly those supposed to be teaching him even now. To think that I still haven't killed Kakashi Hatake, despite all my reasons to do so, Haku reflected with deep pride. When he had spied upon Team 7 in the Land of Waves, he had been surprised that they had only just begun rudimentary training in chakra control and stamina, despite being 12. In the Mizugakure, and Haku's personal experience, it was best to start that far younger. Granted, those were not examples of producing well-adjusted individuals, though Haku would never give up on who he was. That the genin had not learned this in the academy was disconcerting, much less that Kakashi Hatake had only begun to teach them after they were neck-deep in an A-ranked mission. Even worse, Haku's covert observation had actually understated how bad Naruto's skills were, making him wonder just how arrogant Hatake truly was. Basic skills and knowledge were foreign to him, and it was only thanks to ridiculous amounts of chakra and a forbidden technique that he was still alive, to say nothing of harboring a demon. Instead of a honed warrior who was to be the ultimate guardian of his village, he was dealing with a brawler who was forced to rely solely upon variations of only a few techniques. The fact that since the battle on the bridge, his Jonin sensei had done nothing to intensify or even maintain the training he had begun, was truly beyond contempt. However, now that young ice user had a new precious person, he would not let this one down. Consequently, Haku had appointed himself as Naruto's personal tutor, working to bring the blonde up to par. Given everything, it was not surprising that Naruto had been enthusiastic that someone as awesome and cool as Haku would be teaching him. Despite having completed over an hour's work of non-stop exercise, Naruto bounded to his feet without a pause. Now what? He grinned. Are you finally going to teach me a super awesome jutsu? You still haven't taught me wind chakra, and you figured out my element days ago. 2 days, Haku corrected. And I stand by my original argument. Until you can properly control your chakra, it'll be too dangerous. Otherwise you might overpower your jutsu, and kill friend and foe alike. You have to be precise and versatile enough so that you know what your technique will do. Despite his eternal optimism, Naruto grimaced for a moment, before recognizing that there was still a promise that he would learn cool wind jutsu. He had just had to pass a few tests first. Groan. Oh well, he knew Haku would keep that promise. Believe it. So am I going to walk on water then? Because that's pretty cool too. They had started that while still in wave, except it had mostly involved Naruto getting wet. By the time they left though, he was at least sinking noticeably slower. Now he was able to carefully walk about on the surface, and was sure he would be running on it any time. No, we're doing your next step into sealing. Instantly Naruto came to attention. Even more than nifty ninjutsu, fuinjutsu was what he was most curious about above all else. It gave him a connection to a clan he had never known, and was earnest to make his ancestors proud. Moreover, he had seen firsthand how dangerous a man skilled in the sealing arts could be, with that ANBU hunter who had nearly killed him several times. At the same time, he was curious as to why he had never heard about this before, including from the third Hokage. Never during any of their talks had the old man mentioned anything about the Uzumaki. You answered all my questions on the basics of sealing properly, Haku smiled, so now you can start the practical. Awesome. Giving a girlish chuckle, Haku shook his head. I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed. Taking out a scroll of his own, he released a pad of paper, a brush, and an inkwell. Your first lesson will be calligraphy. Huh? Writing properly. What? I can write. Yes, you can, except that when drawing out your seals, if you have a single mistake, either it won't work, or something horrific will happen. Remember all those examples of failed fuinjutsu I had you read? Oh. Wahoo. And Naruto had to admit to himself that, even if Haku was too kind to say so, his handwriting was actually atrocious. Goodness knows, Iruka had yelled that at him enough times, and then make him stay after school to improve upon it. It was eligible now, if only barely. For your second lesson, however, you will also be practicing your chakra control. At the same time, moaned Naruto. Not quite, and now Haku looked serious. We're going to practice with you making a clone after all. Your clone will practice writing, while you do chakra. Huh? Squinted Naruto. Why not make 100 other clones to do all that boring stuff then, while you help me with fighting? Haku just stared impassively, making Naruto fidget. He knew he was expected to answer, and started scratching his head in hopes it would help. Wait. You said, it's a forbidden technique, and we don't really know why. Maybe it's just because of the chakra though. And I'm just awesome enough to have so much. It had been by accident really that Haku had figured out that shadow clones sent their memories to their creator, and frankly Naruto felt stupid for missing that for so long. After all, he had been the one to skip that important detail on the forbidden scroll. Although once he had mentioned that part, Haku's enthusiasm had dimmed. They had experimented a little so far, of course. For example, their first attempt at having 2 clones reading 2 different books at the same time had led Naruto to only receive jumbled memories. Although using a lot of clones to look up or find something was productive. On the other hand, while a clone could not develop any stamina or muscle build that would benefit Naruto, it could retain the muscle memory of what it did, such as learning how to throw a proper punch. Unfortunately though, they still had more failures than successes. Calmly, his friend elaborated. I hear what you are saying, but because you have such enormous chakra, no one would have been able to practice this on the scale you can. Yes, you can send dozens of clones into a fight without trouble, but I'm worried that if too many clones have different memories, from a multitude of perspectives, it might be overwhelming. For all we know, too many memories and experiences coming back at once could melt the brain. Your brain. So we're going to take this slow to figure it out. Which was not unfounded, as they had found out that a large number of memories, spanning several hours, could even make Naruto black out as his subconscious was overwhelmed in trying to sort through the input. Now, if Naruto had been more introspective, he might have questioned why Haku did not just ask someone if they had further details about the technique to learn more, except the blonde was introspective enough. Granted, the ex-missing nin was under a lot of suspicion, and could not just go around asking about classified jutsu. Not to mention the assumption that surely a Jonin captain like Kakashi would have discussed the forbidden technique with his student if he knew anything. Not to mention that they were both used to figuring things out like this themselves. Yes, that included Zabuza, who could hardly teach his tool more than the basics of using ice release, and did not use Senbon himself, without adult support. Asking for it was rather foreign for them by this point. Finally, the sad fact is that they are 12 and 15 respectively, and want to prove how awesome they are on their own. Consequently, while clones did help, Naruto was going to be doing a lot of work with his real body. Even later. Finally, both physically and mentally exhausted, Naruto was lying on his back, taking a break. Beside him, Haku was meditating, and had informed his student he would be learning this in the future too during downtime. Ugh. Well, while it was boring, if Haku said it was useful, then it was. Still ugh. Despite how completely and utterly tired he was, thoughts were still swirling around in his head, even if it was beyond him to latch onto one. Thoughts that he had been burying deep over the last few days. Like, why didn't the old man ever tell me about the Uzumaki clan? My family? What happened to them really? About how shadow clones work? He knows I have trouble reading. Kakashi doesn't train us enough, but he brings me vegetables, and Haku agrees they're healthy. Was he ever going to tell me about the Kyuubi? Why can't I find anything about the Uzumaki on my own? Not even in the library? I had to learn from people from another country. A strong part of him wanted to just run into the Hokage's, one of his precious people, as Haku put it, office, loudly demanding an answer. He almost had even, if not for Haku. His new friend had stood in his way, and insisted that Naruto should try and figure out for himself first. To prove he could. While this challenge was so transparently meant to make Naruto not go to the old man about it, well, he could never back down from a proper challenge. Besides, a totally awesome, hardcore ninja would figure this out by himself, right? Except once he had sat down to think of ideas and theories, and where to find his answers, more and more questions had started to pop up. After all, he had never been told about the demon, and what could be worse than that? How would a few stories about the Uzumaki hurt? And he never told me about the Kyuubi over all those years either, even though we saw each other so much. Will he say it's a secret too, and just not tell me? Would it be better to find out for myself first? And why haven't he or Kakashi talked to me about them, when they know Haku is telling me this sort of stuff I'm learning now? All of this hurt deep down into someone who was supposed to be just a boy, now burdened with far more than one of his years should bear. And in his years of being a pariah and a prankster, he had learned to hold fast to whatever troubled him, and be careful and cautious with it. Land of Fire. Kanehigakure. Hokage Tower. Sitting in his office, Hiruzen Sarutobi silently bemoaned his fate. While the majority of the ninja world held the third Hokage in high regard, as the man who had mastered every jutsu known to the Hidden Leaf, and had risen to S rank on his own without any bloodline, generational technique, or special weapon, the same could not be said among the small club of the village leaders. Among this exclusive group, how little the amount of paperwork you had to do and how you handled it was the highest sign of status. Yes, that is how the mightiest shinobi quietly established their status amongst each other through diplomatic correspondence and closed-door meetings. And while Hiruzen could still use the shadow clone technique, the depressing fact was that he no longer had enough chakra to risk using a jutsu that left him so vulnerable. Assassination attempts were a real concern after all, even without accounting for his friend Danzo. After all, the third Kazekage, the strongest to have held that title, had mysteriously disappeared all those years ago, along with his personal A&B guard. Thus, by unspoken law, the god of ninjas' colleagues snickered at him in closed meetings, and his endless pile of paperwork continued to mock him. At the top of the stack was the most recent report from his A&B carrying out surveillance on Naruto. It appeared that the Hokage's gamble with Haku had paid off in spades, as they were reporting massive development in the young boy's abilities. Truthfully, he had originally been highly skeptical of letting an unknown foreigner anywhere near Naruto, no matter how much his surrogate grandson trusted the kid. Period. Exclamation mark. There was no way it was going to happen without several seals attached to the ice user, a 24/7 guard, and maybe seeing if those experiments with implanting conditioning via genjutsu had any potential after all. Except, Well, it almost seemed silly really, but he had woken up early one morning while Team 7 was still traveling back, having had the best sleep he could remember in years. It had been a beautiful dream really, and had included Naruto and Haku helping the leaves of Konoha flourish. In that fantasy, Naruto had been much stronger and more mature, yet still possessing his wonderfully free spirit. A growth that he had attributed to Haku's training. Wondering if his subconscious was trying to tell him something, Hiruzen had taken the risk, with the proviso that Inoichi Yamanaka still examined the boy's mind. And it appeared his highly tuned intuition had been perfectly right as the reports poured in. Taking a break from his evil paperwork, he looked through his crystal ball to once again observe how the duo were progressing. It had not been a flawless process, of course, as Haku had initially run into a bit of a roadblock since Naruto learned better through practical examples than theory. Still, thanks to lots of work, serene patience, and positive encouragement by someone near his own age, Naruto was making frankly staggering progress in just a few weeks. With one-on-one attention and incentives, he was finally taking them time for ninja theory and book learning. Some days, for his studies, he was actually enthusiastic to be going to the library. Even his serious issues with chakra control were steadily improving. More importantly, based upon his own and ANBU observations, it seemed Naruto was also becoming more mentally healthy due to this constant and supportive interaction. Some in the village might express surprise at this, wondering how this was garnering better results than tough love, or letting a ninja work through his struggles alone. Personally, Hiruzen kept making a mental note to double-check if the history courses were teaching the reasons why Hashirama and Tobirama Senju had been so adamant to found a ninja village. Oh, and Madara too. That was not to say everything was perfect, of course, such as how the boy was also becoming more distant from Team 7. Originally Hiruzen had assigned them together because the teachers had theorized that the three of them would empower and support each other. A rivalry between Sasuke and Naruto would push them both to grow stronger, and also fill in the mutual familial holes in their lives. Sakura would help keep them grounded to reality even as the boys pulled her out of her shell into becoming a more active ninja. Also, she was supposed to be the support ninja for two combat types with significant potential. Although truthfully, the Hokage suspected that said teachers also wanted their two favorite students to get the most attention possible from a living legend, believing Kakashi Hatake would ignore the pariah. Regardless, he had seen enough potential in their claims to give it a shot. Plus it was policy to balance out the teams, with the belief that the two best of the class would cover for the weakest link until he learned to be strong himself. Or die. Not that Kakashi would let any of his teammates die, so no worries there. Unfortunately, according to Kakashi's reports, by the time Haku had appeared, not enough progress had been made in forming that hope for teamwork. Now Naruto's personal development had him looking elsewhere for social interaction and training. It appears, the old man mused, that Naruto is continuing to be the unpredictable one. Sadly, I'm still unsure if he is ready for the truth. Just a little while longer, he promised, ignoring a little voice that told him he was procrastinating. Again the man felt regret for his actions, or rather lack of it, towards a boy he considered a grandson, yet his hands had been tied, despite his dictatorial power. Village politics, along the fear of what would happen to him if other nations learned of his heritage. As the years went by, it seemed that only as an orphan could Naruto be simultaneously safe, and the balance within the village could be maintained. Moreover, he had just learned about the Kyuubi. Seeing how well he could keep that a secret, one that was already fairly well known by those around him, would be a good test to determine if he could remain silent regarding the truth of the fourth Hokage. Except how long will it take to be sure it is safe, wondered the third Hokage, a bitter taste in his mouth. No, that is just an excuse. It needs to be soon. Land of Fire. Konohagakure. Naruto's house. The next morning. With a grunt, Naruto dragged himself out of bed. While even a trained jonin would be aching from such a workout the day before, or the relative equivalent for someone of their heightened condition, he just felt his usual grogginess and stiffness as he started a new day at a frankly unnatural 5 in the morning. He knew Haku would be coming by soon for another 16-hour day for the two of them. The only breaks from training, studying, or testing were meals, mandatory cool-downs, and of course doing the D-ranked missions that Team 7 had restarted for some reason. Plus his regular, mandatory training under Kakashi, although frankly that stuff was far less difficult than anything he had done with Haku. At the end, Naruto would be carried home and dumped into his bed for sleep. I'm making super awesome progress too. Although I'm starting to wish I could have the time for a long and decent shower, yet Mr. Living on the Run for ages just keeps ignoring me. Training to be an elite ninja is great and all, but I reek. And somehow he still comes out looking perfect and prettier than Sasuke and any other girl except Sakura. He paused at that. Despite his attraction towards Sakura, He no longer felt the same enthusiasm at going to see Team 7. Sasuke kept ignoring him, and Sakura kept hitting him, for instance. She also didn't believe me when I said how much I was training, claiming there was no way I could survive that. Then Haku backed me up, and even said the Uzumaki clan was supposed to be famous for their stamina, which I do seem to have. Which is just like him, saying nice stuff like that. A part of Naruto recognized that his newfound friend, and servant, but nuts to that, was being a bit manipulative at times, using arguments like a future Hokage needs to know, or one of the skills they'll look for in the future Hokage is, as part of convincing him to willingly learn the ninja basics, despite how he Naruto was supposed to be too cool for lame stuff like that. Not that I'll ever really complain. Having Haku in my life. He's an awesome, precious person. He actually expects that I will do well and succeed in what I'm doing, and go on to be the most awesome Hokage ever. He always acts proud of how I'm advancing. That's more than anyone's ever done for me. Even the old man and Irika-sensei have never been around for all that. He can still be a bit of a sadist though, and it's even worse given how he smiles so beautifully while doing it. Not to mention when he had that crazy idea about only having ramen twice a week. That was the only point that Naruto firmly put his foot down for. For if reasoned arguments and encouragement were not enough for Naruto to keep going with the boring stuff sometimes, then a Saban needle in a painful spot would do it. Even if it was only in a clone, the memories of that would still come back, which really made it worse given that provided Haku with more opportunities. Land of Fire. Konohagakure. Streets of Konohagakure. A few hours later. Seeing as how Naruto was currently doing a D-level mission, and that the Hokage had subtly hinted it would be best to leave Kakashi alone, Haku had some free time as he was strolling through the village. Yet what was he to do with it? I could find some girls, but Naruto might be done before it gets fun. Food? No, lunch was enough. That weapon store looks interesting, yet both Naruto and I have all we need. I'm still a little tired from today's workout, so maybe a nap? Yeah, it'll make it easier to keep up with Naruto. Hakuyuki. Casually turning around, Haku regarded the man walking towards him. My name is Irika Yumino. I'm a former teacher of Naruto's, and I would like to talk to you about the training you've been giving Naruto. Cocking his head, Haku considered everything he had already heard about this individual from Naruto. This man had not only saved Naruto's life, but had also been the only person besides the third Hokage to believe in Naruto and push him towards success, so at the very least Haku owed him some courtesy. Nodding, he indicated a conveniently located pub for them to sit down and talk. Land of Fire. Konohagakure. Training Ground 3. An hour later. Sakura stared sullenly at Naruto's back as he hurried off after their latest training exercise. The baka had been changing a lot recently, ever since Haku had come into his life. Whenever he was mouthing off or acting like a clown like always, she would try and hit him to make him focus as usual, except now he would just dodge her attempts. He even tried to act like he was doing it casually. Sasuke-kun is getting upset too, seeing Naruto's sudden progress. It's making him look bad with the dead last catching up like that, acting like he can compete with a cool elite like the last Uchiha. And how dare he say I need to train harder after what happened with Zabuza? I did just fine given what we were up against. What more does he expect me to have done? Yet the last time she had yelled that at Naruto, he had just said something. Whatever that meant. I'm perfectly good as a ninja. I was the highest ranking kunoichi at the academy. Yes, it had been a little startling to wake up on the bridge to all those corpses, but she knew Kakashi was really in control of the situation the whole time. The training their sensei had been giving them proved that, and she had been confident he would keep them all safe. Even Naruto when he kept rushing in like an idiot. Honestly, who does he think he is? Still, Sakura was a little puzzled by Haku's revelation about the Uzumaki clan. Apparently they had been a clan that had ruled the small village of Yuzushiogakure, the hidden whirlpool, and had been masters of the sealing arts. She would have called him a liar, if Kakashi-sensei had not confirmed this himself. Well, made a word of agreement and turned back to his book. Still, Sakura found it weird she had never heard about them before. Maybe they had a very humiliating or treacherous end, and that was one of the reasons her mom did not want her hanging out with the dunce. Regardless, she highly doubted anyone like Naruto could make much progress in such a complicated subject. If someone like her or Sasuke were not doing it, then it would prove too hard for Naruto. He would probably give up on it eventually, or Haku would concede defeat in frustration at his lack of progress. An idiot was still an idiot, and even if he made some clones to help him out, that just meant more idiots running about being loud and useless. At least he's not hitting on me anymore, not that Haku would permit him the time for a date. Especially given how he smells now. Seriously, I thought that Haku was supposed to be Naruto's servant, not the other way around. Across the field, another brooding teenager was also puzzling over the departing orange headache after they had finished the most recent round of teamwork building exercises. Sasuke's emotions were in a turmoil regarding Naruto, though jealousy and frustration were at the forefront. Sasuke trained constantly, every day, every waking moment. His only goal was to become strong enough to kill that man. To become an avenger. Even when he was cooling down from his latest exercise routine, he was using his newfound Sharingan to memorize information to help him succeed. He pored through books on the theory of tracking down nuke, the appearance and properties of medical herbs, tactics and strategy. He tried to get some jutsu scrolls through official channels, but apparently his ninja rank was not high enough to get any significant ones without permission, and Kakashi would not grant it. He needed to become stronger, as their time in the Land of Waves proved. Sakura had been as useless as expected, yet Sasuke had been taken out early on without being able to contribute anything. Worse, when he had awoken, it had been Naruto poking him awake. The dead last had been in better shape than their sensei, and Kakashi had done nothing to correct the Dobe's boasts on how well he had done. And now he was rapidly progressing in such a short period of time. What was Sasuke missing that would allow a loser to make such advances while he himself was developing so slowly? Because Kakashi did not permit sparring matches between team members, he was unable to truly test himself to prove his superiority over the Dobe. However, he could still see how Naruto's form was quickly becoming far more fluid, with fewer openings in its. Am I not really getting as strong as I thought I was? Sasuke wondered. Will I never be able to bridge the gap between me and that man? Because I know that as powerful as Zabuza claimed to be, that man would still be casually killed him even years ago. For his part, Kakashi was also a little concerned with how fast Naruto was developing, and how it could throw off the team's dynamic, which might lead to one of them dying like Obito. Sakura was falling even further behind, and Sasuke's psyche was too precarious still to permit someone like Naruto rise to challenge him. Given more time under Kakashi's guiding hand, that would change, except it was still too early. On the flip side, if Kakashi tried to interfere with Naruto's growth, it would seriously damage the boy's trust in his superior, which would lead to all sorts of negative consequences. What should I do? He wondered despondently. The drills I'm doing to help their teamwork only seem to work on the training field, and only because I'm their adversary, an enemy to unite them. On a personal level, they're even more dysfunctional than my genin team was under Minato-sensei. At this rate, I'll be forced to give Sasuke extra training to keep him from doing anything drastic if he gets too frustrated at his lack of progress. Land of Fire. Kanehigakure. Conveniently located pub. And another reason I'm worried about Naruto's lack of social interaction is that he's had trouble learning values that are common to most people, especially with ethics. Haku nodded silently at this, approving of all the insight Iruka had shown thus far, and realizing he may have made a few false assumptions about how best to prepare Naruto for a ninja's life. The ninja world could be very accepting of unorthodox or eccentric ninja, so long as they could get results. Yet if someone already had a lot of prejudice against them before they even started, say by having a tailed beast in their gut, then it was another story. And acceptance was even more difficult if the ninja in question had highly unusual opinions on commonly approved morals. As the years passed from the time of the Warring States period, hidden villages as a whole were increasingly wary about comrades who were both highly trained killers, and also significantly diverged from the norm in terms of social interaction and ethical standards. After all, who knew what such people would do next? So it was only really alright if these social outsiders were all confirmed to be very obedient, and unquestionably loyal to their leaders. While Naruto was loyal to the Hokage and village, he was anything but obedient or predictable. Moreover, if someone replaced the third Hokage as leader, Naruto might maintain his professional loyalty for them, if not his personal loyalty. In that case, Naruto needed friends and allies within the system, and perhaps even get to know all the candidates for being the future Hokage. Whatever Haku might think about his own parents, they had still managed to hammer in a strong moral foundation into him, which Zabuza and his companions had added on to. Haku was well aware that he was still atypical in personality, even for a ninja, never mind a civilian, as he was ninja who tried to be a pacifist of all things, but became coldly brutal if his precious people were threatened. Most people could not handle such an instantaneous switch between extremes, and resided somewhere in between. And then there was his passion for cross-dressing and other hobbies. Meanwhile, Iruka was still talking. I suspect that most of what he has learned is from talks with the third Hokage, or childhood stories that he overheard other people telling. He believes that there are evil people in the world, but I am a little worried about how he defines them, and how readily he accepts they should die. Once again, Haku nodded in response, remembering how he had worked to make Naruto see why it was a bad thing so many people had died at the bridge, and had then helped Naruto feel better afterwards. Because those hunter ninja had been attacking him, Naruto had labeled them bad guys who obviously deserved death, overlooking how being a ninja would require him in the future be attacking other people, and thus be the bad guy in turn. Naruto's sadness over Zabuza-sama's passing had also been a little surprising, if appreciated. I may have the skills to make a trained killer, yet it appears I am still too inexperienced in making a trained and functional ninja. A functional person, Haku conceded reluctantly. Why are you telling me this? Haku finally asked aloud. Because you are able to spend more time with Naruto than I am. And you are free to help him in ways I am not. What do you suggest? Land of Fire. Kanehigakure. Random Street. So, what are we doing? Asked Haku. Pranking? Gleefully exclaimed Naruto. I'm thinking of turning this one Market Street bright pink. Oh, and cover the pavement in a massive puddle of, green paint. This was exactly the sort of behavior that Iruka had warned Haku about. Naruto, he warned. You're a genin now. A legal adult. If you get caught, there will be serious consequences. I know that. That's why I'm not doing it with Orange. We just won't get caught. Unlikely, Haku knew. He tried a different track. That kind of behavior will make it harder for you to become Hokage. Huh? Naruto blinked olishly at him. What do you mean? Of course I'm gonna become Hokage. Believe it. If you go about pranking people, it'll be harder to get the Jonin votes. More confusion. What do you mean? To be Hokage you just gotta be awesome. Taken aback, the pretty boy could only stare. Does he know? He cut himself off. Of course Naruto would be oblivious to the actual requirements to become Hokage. Or Kage in general. He had just assumed that his friend would have put a little more forethought into his dream. Although, it's possible he never looked because he was afraid of what he'd find. In Konoha, he slowly said, you need to be nominated by the Fire Daimyo, and then ratified by a majority vote of the Jonin Council. Or chosen by the previous Hokage, and still pass the vote. If you go about upsetting people, then it will be even harder. Sullenly Naruto glared at Haku, angry at his friend for arguing with him, and failing to believe he could become Hokage still. Even if he kept up the pranks. I can and I will. Believe it. Just watch. With a huff, he took off. Sighing, Haku followed from the shadows. Stealth was one of his specialties, and he would intervene when needed. Later. Totally and utterly speechless, Haku could only stare agape as ANBU ran around like chickens with their heads cut off. What is wrong with this village? Naruto Uzumaki, the former dead last of his academy class, with frankly abysmal skills when Haku had met him. Except then he went around and displayed low-level Jonin class stealth and cunning as he set up pranks and traps that had adult ninja looking like incompetence. Worse, incompetence covered in glow-in-the-dark, pink glitter, and catnip. Haku himself had barely been able to keep up with Naruto, especially when he got on the move, displaying evasive tactics that were frankly humbling for both their simplicity and ingenuity. He had nearly lost the blonde when all of a sudden his chakra signature had simply vanished, somehow being completely suppressed, which made sense if he wanted to evade notice despite having massive chakra reserves in addition to housing the mightiest of tailed beasts. Otherwise even only half-decent sensors would be able to pick him up, never mind the infamous Byakugan. The final straw being how there was no evidence left behind, with Naruto dropping stink bombs to throw off even Niken. Konoha's legendary forces were left in the dust. The worst of the worst was Naruto appeared utterly oblivious to the significance of the skills he used for pranking. Pranking? Clearly someone was missing the ball somewhere, and if Zabuza had been in charge here, those missing balls would have been heads. Lots of heads. Along with the surviving ANBU receiving remedial classes from a 12-year-old. Personally, Haku was feeling a grudging respect and pity for the ANBU, for having to put up with Naruto's pranks, the word itself did not do proper justice, for so long. A part of him also felt it is probably best he did not know where Naruto got the materials he used, especially when surviving on only a genin's paycheck. Plausible deniability and all that, especially with that much pink paint. He may be an obedient servant come friend, but he is also still on probation. Land of Fire. Kanehigakure. Random Street. Next day. Naruto ran as fast as he could so that he would not be late. Haku had suggested he get in touch with some of his fellow ex-classmates, to which he had been reluctant until his friend mentioned it was Iruka's suggestion. Which meant it was perfectly fine. especially since his former teacher would know how Naruto's previous attempts at making friends had failed. Sure enough, when he had jumped in to meet some of them, after confirming he had successfully ditched the ANBU that afternoon, they had said yes. Even better, so had some of their teammates. Turned out that they were all quite happy to talk to their fellow genin and reconnect, even if it had only been a little while since graduation. Guess Shikamaru, Choji, and Kiba were closer precious friends. Friends was the word he meant to use now, than he thought? Unfortunately, he had lost track of time completing Team 7's mission, cleaning up some old woman's house, because he had gotten into an argument with Sasuke about who should be doing what. I barely had time to wash off of the sweat from this morning's training, and I might still be late. Thankfully, it looked like he had gotten there just in time, and his heart glowed as he saw them. Kiba and Izuka, he and Naruto kept butting heads with each other, but they had been sort of like pals back in the academy. More mature and older